Just 1 month before his service ended, the kingdom collapsed and the fortress went silent. Magic lynx and messenger birds, all dead. Even the emergency beacons stayed dark, leaving the garrison completely isolated from the world. The knights were panicking, asking the commander if the castle was even safe or how much longer they could hold out. The stronghold sat high in the mountains, surrounded by jagged defenses, but they were already reaching their breaking point. Granaries were emptying fast. Hope was lower. In their desperate fight for survival, they had to make a brutal call. In times like these, you need strength, real strength, and that starts with a proper, soul-filling meal. That day's lunch, a hearty beef stew with a secret glaze designed to build courage. As they ate, the soldiers argued. Was leaving the walls a suicide mission? Probably. But holy hell, the stew was so delicious it was all they could focus on. Then something snapped. Lord Arthur, who'd been cautious before, suddenly dropped his spoon. "We ride," he roared. "We go out and we fight these beasts right now." It was a total turnaround from his usual cowardice, but he wasn't the only one feeling the fire. Every knight stood up, ready to obey. I mean, people have to eat, and there's nothing better than a monster hunt after a feast. The man behind this madness, Master Chef Alistair, 23 years old and the real heart of this insane garrison. Later, the men were training in the courtyard, blowing off steam as the sun dipped low. A chaotic game of football broke out. One knight got so hyped for a goal that he actually shoved his own teammate's head. Meanwhile, over at the tavern, the local gossip was spreading fast among the tired guards. The whole platoon had been complaining about lunch, yet they were still praying dinner would be better. From the shadows, Alistair watched the scene, looking pretty irritated by the lack of discipline. It was almost mealtime, and these idiots were filling up on scraps. He knew he had to get the supplies to the larder first. He hauled the heavy sacks into the kitchen and started dicing carrots with terrifying, lightning-fast skill. But then, disaster. Someone burst in with bad news that caught his attention immediately. The main course, the smoked salmon, was out of stock. Alistair was livid. He told his squire to check the stores a dozen times. To make things worse, Lord Arthur was being a diva again, refusing to eat the roasted greens scheduled as a side. Alistair was fuming, but with the garrison so short-staffed, he decided to let the salmon issue slide for now. He was already doing the work of 3 men in that kitchen, handling every extra duty himself. No salmon for the troops and a picky lord to deal with. Fine, time for a plan B. Alistair barked out an order for everyone to hear. Menu change. We're swapping the salmon for fried boar belly. Luckily, they had the meat. He ordered his squire to start the prep immediately, no time to waste. And since the lord loved his pasta, Alistair decided to whip up a special chicken noodle dish just for him. Out in the courtyard, the game was still going, but just a few feet away, something was very wrong. A puddle of blood and a single iron boot. The killer, a massive behemoth, and it was heading straight for the barracks. Back in the heat of the kitchen, the squire handed Alistair a mug of ale to help him cool down. With only a few days of service left, Alistair took a swig. Everything tastes better when you're almost free. The squire sighed, jealous of the knights on leave, and asked what Alistair's plan was after his discharge. Our hero wasn't sure yet, though he mentioned the idea of opening his own inn someday. Maybe learn to cook properly, he thought, but the squire just looked at him with total confusion. The tavern business is a nightmare, Alistair, and let's be real, cooking was never your strong suit. Still, the chef found a weird satisfaction in this. He loved it when the men said his food hit the spot. The squire offered him a spot at his family's prestigious estate to learn the ropes of high-end dining. Alistair immediately spat out his ale. First, he couldn't stand the guy, and second, he had zero interest in foreign spice cuisine. Besides, a professional kitchen is stricter than the army, and he was done taking orders. He shut down the conversation and told the squire to grab more salt from the cellar. He barked at the rest of the staff to move their asses and get things in order immediately. Deep down, Alistair wondered if gaining some real experience at a fancy place wouldn't be such a bad idea. But then he shook it off. For him, the true pinnacle of the craft was right here, in the chaos. It's just another day in the manor's kitchens. Until it isn't. A blood-curdling scream shatters the air, making Arthur the lead surgeon freeze in his tracks. He knows that voice. It's his young assistant, Julian. Arthur doesn't hesitate for a single second. He sprints toward the larder like a man possessed. He bursts through the heavy oak door, but the sight inside stops him dead. Standing there is the back of something. Well, something that shouldn't exist in our world. It's a literal nightmare. A beast straight out of a dark fairy tale. And right beneath its claws lies poor Julian, looking completely broken and filled with despair. Arthur's heart just drops. The thought that Julian might be dead hits him like a physical blow. This isn't a wolf or a bear. Arthur can't even wrap his head around how this thing is real. For a heartbeat, his brain just shuts down in total denial. But then he sees the pool of blood spreading across the stone floor and realizes this is no dream. Julian's cries for help are drawing the attention of the other kitchen staff. Arthur knows he has to clear the room immediately or they're all dead. He tries to wave them back, to scream a warning, but they're too panicked to understand the message he's trying to send. One young cook, Thomas, rushes in without thinking. He finds himself face to face with the monster, which is already looking for its second course. Thomas lets out a howl of pure terror. Seeing no other choice, Arthur moves in to make a stand. He's the only one left who can lead them. He's got to try something. He snatches a heavy carving knife off the floor and flings it at the creature with everything he's got. Clang! The blade just bounces off the monster's hide like it's hitting solid steel. Thomas collapses right there, totally giving up on life. Now the beast is interested. It turns its cold, predatory gaze away from the cook and fixes it right on the surgeon, the only threat left. Arthur's teeth are gritted in pure frustration. Nothing he tries is working, and now he's trapped with this giant freak of nature. The monster doesn't wait. It lunges in a total frenzy, charging at him with enough speed to shatter anything in its path. Even as he dives under a heavy prep table, Arthur is still questioning his sanity. How can a thing like this actually exist? Fortunately, the beast is more brawn than brains. It can't pull up in time and slams headfirst into the stone wall with a massive, sickening crash. That only makes it even angrier than before. Thomas is screaming, asking what the hell that thing is, but Arthur is just as clueless as he is. The monster roars and swipes with its claws, literally shredding the concrete table in two. Arthur is now completely out in the open. It wastes zero time. The beast lunges forward, aiming for a finishing blow to claim its next snack of the day. But then, splash, a huge ladle of boiling oil flies through the air. Thomas managed to hurl the whole thing right onto the monster's back. The beast actually stops. For a second, the boy thinks his attack worked. He's already grabbing another ladle, his face set in grim determination. "It hates the heat," he shouts to the surgeon. Thomas is showing some real spine now, buying Arthur a few precious moments with this strategy. That's the opening Arthur needed. He realizes that even though the outer shell is like armor, the monster definitely has a weak spot. Our hero knows he needs to warn the others, but then, disaster. Thomas gets distracted for just one tiny second. Wham! The monster's tail whips around and catches the boy right in the face. Thomas is sent flying across the room with terrifying force. Arthur is paralyzed with fear. Thomas is down, and now he's the only one left alive in this house of horrors. The beast isn't done. It turns its attention back to the surgeon, lashing out with that terrifying tail once again. Arthur just curls up, protecting his head. He knows he's outmatched. The entire situation is completely, utterly out of his control. He starts to accept his fate. He's going to join Julian and Thomas in a better place. But then, the monster starts acting weird. Arthur tries to see what's going on, but his eyes are stinging from the hot oil and steam filling the larder. Wait, look at the scales. The boiling oil actually worked. The monster's skin is turning bright red and starting to crack open. The soft flesh underneath is finally exposed. Arthur realizes this is his only shot. It's finally possible to fight back. He needs something that can cut deep. He spots Julian's favorite knife, the only real weapon within reach at this moment. The monster is thrashing, distracted by the pain. Arthur knows if he tries to run, the noise will bring the beast right back on him. It's a total suicide mission, but at this point, Arthur is beyond caring. He's done being afraid. While the monster is busy rummaging through the wreckage, the surgeon grips the knife and lunges forward with a desperate roar. "Just die," he screams, plunging the blade straight into the creature's throat. It's a direct hit right into the neck. The knife sinks deep into the flesh. Blood sprays everywhere, soaking Arthur, as the massive creature finally hits the floor. He can't stop. He has to finish this once and for all. Without a single second of hesitation, Arthur begins to strike again and again. The beast howls in agony. Fueled by the rage of losing his companions, Arthur just keeps going, his vision blurred with tears. "Go to hell," he shouts, pouring every last bit of his strength into the attack. And finally, the monster stops moving. It's over. He actually killed it. Arthur can barely even stand, his legs shaking from the sheer, soul-crushing exhaustion of the fight. But then something strange happens. A glowing blue window appears in front of his eyes. "Congratulations on your awakening," it says. Arthur stares, dumbfounded. He's gained several new abilities, including something called Grandmaster Culinary Talent. What a wild turn of events. An eerie silence hung over the castle barracks. No squires in the yard, no knights at practice, just a chilling, heavy stillness. Another beast had struck. Sir Arthur stepped through the gates only to find a nightmare of fallen soldiers scattered like broken dolls. The noble knight struggled through the dark woods, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he questioned his own sanity. Even as an experienced healer, he couldn't identify this monster, let alone make sense of the cryptic message burning in his vision. Suddenly, the air shimmered with a kingdom-wide announcement. The Great Faction War, survival of the crowns, was officially beginning. The strange system urged the hero to swear fealty to a noble house immediately, promising exclusive boons for early participants. Currently unaligned, Arthur stared at the floating words. It felt less like reality and more like some twisted, divine game. He wondered who could be playing such a cruel prank, but then, boom, the Banner Conquest event was triggered. His mission: seize control of the Stone Province Sector 17 and expand his territory or die trying. More territory meant more legendary rewards, but Arthur couldn't care less about loot while his head was spinning in circles. Escaping this death trap was the only thing on his mind. He wasn't in the mood for talk of wars or factions. He needed to find other survivors. Numbers meant safety. For now, his only ally was a cold steel dagger and his wits. He began to scout the perimeter, heart hammering against his ribs. Then he heard it, the sharp, distant crack of crossbow fire. Weapons. If there were bolts flying, it meant there was an armory nearby stocked with the gear he desperately needed. It seemed the men who chose to run were finally growing a spine, heading straight for the main weapons depot for a fighting chance. A glimmer of hope, but then a snarl. A massive beast, identical to the one he'd barely survived before, towered over him in a blind rage. No traps, no hot oil to weaken it, just him and the beast. Then a strange light flickered. Skill activated the master chef's sight. He watched, mesmerized, as the window analyzed the creature. Seconds later, a ding. Ingredient analysis complete. The system chimed again, granting Arthur a bizarre secret: the beginner's guide to drake preparation. The drake's joints are smooth and lack scales, allowing for high mobility, but making them the perfect points to strike. It's a simple ingredient if you have the stomach for it. First step: sever the windpipe and drain every drop of blood. For a perfect bleed, you must pierce the hide just below the left arm, striking true toward the heart. Arthur was reeling. His mind was screaming in confusion, but suddenly, a perfect blueprint for killing this thing was etched into his brain. The beast lunged, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. Arthur's heart nearly stopped, but he didn't back down. He didn't have time to wonder if the message was a lie. He just moved, following the recipe with lethal precision. A second passed. Then the beast let out a shriek so piercing it could wake the dead. Notification. Novice dagger skill unlocked. His proficiency with the blade was skyrocketing with every desperate strike. The attack was a perfect success. Arthur had doubted his small blade could even scratch that iron hide, but he was wrong. Following the instructions to the letter, the hero delivered the final blow, ending the monster's life in one clean motion. It was over. Arthur stood over the carcass, drenched in dark blood and trembling from the realization of how close he'd come to the end. If that message hadn't appeared when it did, he'd be nothing more than a pile of bones right now. Suddenly, a warm rush of energy filled his soul. The system was feeding him reward points for the successful harvest. With the master chef's sight, no ingredient, no matter how monstrous, was beyond his ability to butcher and process. By classifying an enemy as food, the system revealed every weakness, preparation method, and even secret recipes. Arthur looked at the gore-covered beast. Was the system seriously suggesting he eat this nightmare fuel? A window popped up. Drake fillet, flavor mild and rich, note becomes tough if overcooked. The instructions continued, detailing how to purge the stench of the blood to make the meat palatable for a feast. Enough, Arthur roared at the empty air. He questioned if the system was insane for suggesting he cook a man-eater. He was a knight, not a butcher for monsters. Besides, he still had no idea what this awakening really meant for his future. "Who goes there?" a voice shouted. A soldier leveled a crossbow at him but then paused. "Arthur, is that you?" It was Sir Cedric from the supply unit. Arthur felt a massive weight lift off his shoulders. He wasn't the last one left. Cedric looked him over, eyes wide. "What are you doing here alone, lad? And why are you covered in that?" Arthur dodged the question, asking how Cedric survived. The soldier explained he followed the sounds of the struggle. They couldn't waste another second. Their only hope was reaching the central armory to resupply before the next wave hit. As they sprinted through the ruins, Cedric asked about the other lords, but Arthur could only look away in grim silence. Total slaughter. The captain's heart breaks for his fallen men, but Arthur insists they shouldn't blame the castle guards. In the end, they were good soldiers, and Arthur was the only one to survive that bloody massacre. Reaching the outpost, the relief is palpable. A survivor. They head straight for the kitchens. But Arthur sees the truth. The guards have frantically fortified the defenses around the storehouse. These men are living ghosts. Utterly exhausted, their tunics and armor in a truly deplorable state. Even so, the sergeant mutters that just being together like this is a comfort. Right then, ding, Arthur's system drops a new secret, the manual of the mortal harvest. He looks at the skills content, and his blood turns to ice. After a moment, the realization hits. The system is talking about his own comrades. Arthur can't even wrap his head around what this twisted skill is actually implying. Snapping back to reality, a guard asks the sergeant to head inside for a report. Arthur realizes that the floating interface window is his secret alone. Inside the storehouse, Commander Sterling sighs. "We're in a right mess, aren't we?" He gestures for them to sit, letting Arthur pick whichever chair he likes. The commander notes that a decent number of survivors remain, for now. It's the logistics knight's turn to check the rosters. Regarding the commander, Arthur knows he's just a low-ranking, greedy noble. "I can't eat this swill," or "I'll have something better later," were his usual lines to the cook. Yet he always crawled back during the hardest trials, begging for a fresh meal on the spot. Sadly, this man is now the leader of the surviving unit. As for the logistics team, Cedric is here, but their captain has unfortunately passed on to the great beyond. Hearing this, the commander pales. Is it really true? The soldiers' grim faces say it all. Half of the remaining men weren't even high-ranking knights, and it seems only those who haven't lost their minds have actually shown up. Currently, the logistics unit has 10 active blades, while the scouts have 7. Meanwhile, the royal kitchens have only one member left, Arthur. Barely 100 souls survived this disaster, roughly half the total garrison. Sterling demands to see the scroll and questions Julian about the situation. Julian explains that before arriving. He checked with the High Command, but they've lost all contact with the rest of the kingdom. The commander is bordering on desperation. The reality is grim. All messenger birds are gone, and every magic scrying channel is offline. The sergeant tried every possible way to reach the capital, but nothing works. They are completely and utterly stuck. One soldier wonders if it was a magic nullification curse from the Northern Empire, but the citadel has ancient wards, designed to block such dark arts. Because of this, the men feel like they're walking dead, terrified for their families back home. One of them begs the commander for a plan. "We're trapped here." Arthur notices the growing rot of anxiety in the room. He knows that once they have a clear mission, the men's fear might actually settle down a bit. In this chaos, the commander must step up and give orders. He's the only noble left. But despite everyone waiting for a decision, the man just sits there, silent and useless. The soldiers begin to spiral. If even the commander doesn't know what to do, what hope do they have? Some knights start losing their tempers at the officer's cowardice, while others try to keep the peace. It's total chaos. Finally, Sterling circles back to the silence from the capital. He suggests sending riders to the High Command for orders. Arthur interrupts immediately. "Wait, won't that path be suicide?" This outpost sits in the high peaks, 4,000 feet up. By carriage, the journey is grueling. Besides, the men doubt they could survive the monsters on the road for a 2-hour ride. In Sterling's mind, he thinks Arthur is just talking nonsense. Even so, he admits the danger but insists they must use volunteers. The room grows heavy with dread. In the end, Sterling just doesn't want the weight of command. In a crisis like this, one wrong move means heads roll. That's why he's trying to dodge responsibility by passing the blame to his superiors. This is definitely not the heart of a true commander, and Arthur expected better. Regardless, Sterling sneers. Does anyone opposing my plan have a better idea? Silence. No one dares to challenge the noble. He announces the rest will stay at the outpost until word arrives. Turning back to their current plight, the commander asks about the grain stores. Thomas explains they have enough for 6 weeks, but with half the mouths gone, they can stretch it to 2 months. No one dares to challenge the commander's word. It's settled. The remaining knights will hold the fort until reinforcements arrive. The situation is grim. The lieutenant turns to his advisor, his voice heavy as he asks the one question on everyone's mind. How much food do we have left? Alistair checks the ledgers. 6 weeks' worth of rations, but with our numbers dwindling. We might stretch it to 2 months, if we're lucky. First things first, the supplies. The garrison has some stock left, but it's not exactly a mountain of gear, and there definitely isn't a resupply caravan coming to save them. The beasts are still the biggest threat. The officers spend hours arguing over how to deal with the monsters lurking just outside the fortress walls. They're also stressing over the basics, managing the well water and the mana crystals for light. But honestly, the plan is just to sit tight and wait for word from the capital. Our main man, Arthur, notices the soldiers are finally starting to keep their cool. But then, Commander Sterling dismisses the meeting to go work on strategic plans for other units. Arthur is absolutely livid. The most critical issue is staring them right in the face, and they're just ignoring it. He can't stay quiet. He speaks up, asking if they're going to address the awakening at all. Sterling just blinks. He has zero clue what Arthur is even talking about. Arthur reminds them about the monsters they've been hunting, which the commander confirms. But then, a realization hits Arthur like a ton of bricks. He's likely the only person in this entire kingdom who has actually awakened. He needs to prove it. Fast, so he pulls out his heavy kitchen cleaver. You can imagine the look on their faces. Sterling and the other knights start getting seriously nervous about what this sergeant is about to do with a meat knife. Arthur knows talk is cheap. Unless he shows them exactly how he slaughtered those monsters, nobody is going to believe a word he says. He locks in. He remembers the feeling of slicing through thick vegetables, focusing all that intent into his blade as he eyes the heavy wooden table. Then, bam! His ability flares, and he slices clean through the oak table like it's made of butter, leaving it in perfect pieces. Total silence, then pure chaos. Everyone in the room is losing their minds, screaming, "How on earth did a cook just do that?" Arthur keeps it simple. He tells them that after he killed a beast that broke into the kitchen, he felt something change. He awakened. Sterling is the most skeptical of the bunch, but Arthur doesn't back down. "Trust me," he says, "I didn't believe it at first either." It was hard for Arthur to process how he even survived that first fight. But now, things are so bad he knows death could be waiting around every corner. The monster count is a total mystery, and get this, he only had 3 days left until his military service was over. Talk about bad timing. But Arthur isn't about to let the doom and gloom win. He's a cook at heart, so he commits to one thing: keeping every single soldier fed. He tells them their first real mission has to be awakening every single man in the unit. But right then, crack, a massive noise echoes through the halls. A scout bursts in, face pale as a ghost. Monsters are approaching the base. Sterling panics, demanding to know how many. It's bad. At least 5 of them are right outside. No more time for talking. The commander orders everyone to their battle stations immediately. Arthur starts sprinting. He's wondering why these beasts are suddenly being so aggressive. It's like they're launching a full-scale assault. Outside the gates, the battle is already heating up. Luckily, the monsters seem to be drawn to the spots where the soldiers are grouped up the most. One knight shouts that it's taking an entire quiver of arrows just to bring down one beast. It's a total drain on their resources. They're screaming to conserve ammunition, but at least the arrows are actually doing some damage. Still, the cost is insane. It takes 20 to 30 bolts per monster. Arthur watches this and realizes they aren't going to last long at this rate. Sure, the storehouse has some supplies, but they're going to hit their limit way sooner than anyone wants to admit. Once the dust settles, the leader checks in on everyone. But the news is grim. 2 brave soldiers didn't make it out of the fight. Arthur asks what the plan is for the fallen, and a knight tells him they'll be buried in the old cemetery nearby. Arthur nods, but he's got a bad feeling about this. With the attack over, they finally start putting the meeting's plans into motion. First task, sending a desperate plea for help to the high command and praying for a response. 2 soldiers step up to volunteer. One of them acts all confident, saying they'll be fine as long as they stay downwind of the monsters. They're packing heavy, carrying plenty of arrows and supplies. Sterling promises to provide cover fire until they clear the immediate area. While they head out, Arthur's mind is elsewhere. He needs to figure out how to trigger more awakenings among the men. There's a massive debate about why Arthur is the only special one. Why hasn't anyone else changed? They start theorizing. Maybe bows and crossbows don't count. The men heard Arthur killed his beast solo while they're just shooting from a distance. They can't quite wrap their heads around it. Is there something else Arthur did that they're missing? Arthur explains the feeling, like energy was pouring into his body the moment the monster died. You have to absorb that essence to grow. The commander looks like he's about to be sick. The idea of getting into a melee with those nightmares, absolutely terrifying. Arthur points out the weak spots, like the soft skin under the armpit where a blade can slide right in. He also mentions they hate heat. He tells them how he used boiling oil to get the upper hand. But even with tricks, someone has to get close, and that's a death sentence for most. So they come up with a new tactic. It's way easier to weaken the beasts with a few arrows first. The plan is simple. Soften them up with range, then move in for the kill when the monster is on its last legs. That way, they trigger the awakening safely. Sterling takes it seriously and orders everyone to sharpen their bayonets and daggers right now. No more relying only on bows. One soldier agrees, saying a proper military blade is way safer than a kitchen knife anyway. Let's see if he's right. Alistair might not be the strongest in a sword fight, but his tactical mind, absolutely brilliant. He's the group's brain, which is exactly why the young Lord Tristan listens when he makes the call. Time to eat. The men-at-arms find it strange, feasting before a fight. But Alistair explains it clearly. You never face demons on an empty stomach, even if your nerves are shot. Hunger doesn't matter, energy does. Before long, the midday sun fades, and it's time for the evening feast. Alistair approaches the captain for the green light. The commander agrees, assigning 2 guards to help prep the Great Hall's pantry. Meanwhile, the scouts sent to the citadel are finally nearing their destination. Back in the heat of the kitchen, Alistair is stunned. Cooking used to be a chore, but now, it's like the ingredients are dancing for him. He was worried about handling the hearth alone, but his culinary mastery has surged way past a normal chef's skill. He's a natural. Boom, the apprentice's roasted boar belly is ready. Thanks to perfect flame control, his mastery levels up right then and there. His dedication hits the adept rank, and his cooking attributes get another solid boost. But it's not just about the flavor. The status plate reveals the truth. Consuming this dish temporarily skyrockets a man's strength and reflexes. It's literally a power-up on a plate. Alistair still isn't quite sure what a +1 bonus really means, but before he can overthink it, the divine interface chimes in. It suggests adding a special secret glaze. Suddenly, a strange, shimmering essence begins to swirl in his left hand. This power is wild. It allows Alistair to literally weave emotions into the food. And right now, every man in this keep is trembling with fear. He hopes this heartwarming skill will settle their nerves and give them some peace. With the magic added, Alistair is hyped to serve it up. In the mess hall line, the tired guards are asking for double portions. Alistair just smiles and tells them to eat as much as they want. Still, our hero is skeptical. Does the magic actually work? It's not like they're going to sprout massive muscles the second they swallow. You can't see the change on the outside, obviously, but deep down, the skill is already starting to weave its magic. One of the men walks over, genuinely thanking the 𝑭𝒑𝒑𝒊𝒏𝒆 cook for the meal. 2 others join in, looking way more refreshed than they did 10 minutes ago. They're practically begging for more, and Alistair happily obliges. He's starting to realize that managing a soldier's heart might be his most valuable tool yet. But then, crash. The sound of another monster assault echoes through the hall. Not even a moment of peace for these poor souls. No rest. Even under the cover of night, the men drop their spoons and sprint toward the outer barracks where the screaming started. By the time they arrive, the crossbow fire has stopped. Alistair stands there, wondering if they actually managed to drive the beasts back. The guards start scouting the shadows. Alistair pushes through the crowd to get a better look, and that's when he spots Tristan. He immediately demands to know what happened. The knights explain they caught a few monsters alive, following Alistair's specific orders to the letter. 2 of the beasts are pinned down, snarling. One man steps forward, ready to finish the creature and attempt his ascension into a higher power. Alistair had insisted the knights go first. If the common folk don't see these miracles with their own eyes, they'll never believe it's possible. Show, don't tell. That was the plan. At the barracks wall, the soldier plunges his blade home, ending the creature's life. And just like that, he awakens. He's been reborn as a novice mage with a gift for lightning. The guy is absolutely stunned when the status window appears in thin air. Everyone's frozen, trying to process the magic. Alistair asks if he can see the magical plate too, and the soldier's fear instantly turns into pure pride. He summons a spark of his power, confirming every crazy thing Alistair said was true. Our hero is thrilled. The experiment is a massive success. It's incredible, even if some of the older veterans still look skeptical. Alistair asks about the boy's new class, and he confirms it, novice mage. He explains his signature move is Thunder Strike, and Alistair is floored. Actual sorcery exists in this world, and they just unlocked it. This proves it. Your talent determines your path, and killing a beast up close is the key. The truth is setting in, even for the doubters. Now, it's Tristan's turn. He's next in line to prove his worth, and Alistair gives him a final warning. Stay sharp. He tells the crowd to watch carefully, but the scene they walk into is terrifying, much worse than they expected. The monster in the cage is still thrashing, and the sheer malice in its eyes makes everyone's blood run cold. Tristan doesn't flinch. He internally commands the beast to stay still, determined to end this nightmare in under a minute. He slams his boot onto the creature's chest for leverage, but that was a huge mistake. The shock wakes the beast up. With one final surge of adrenaline, it lunges forward with everything it has left. It sinks its teeth deep into Tristan's leg. The crowd gasps. Even dying, these monsters are absolute killing machines. The force of the bite is brutal. Tristan starts screaming in a mix of pure agony and white-hot rage. Gareth yells to Alistair, "Do something, save him." Another guard levels his bow, but Alistair barks out a cold refusal. No, let him finish it. He plants a foot on the beast's chest to pull his blade. Bad move. The abomination jolts awake, one final, desperate surge of adrenaline coursing through its veins. It lunges. Before anyone can react, its jaws snap shut on Arthur's leg. Even dying, this thing is lethally dangerous. The panic in the room is instant. The crunch of bone is sickening. Arthur screams, a raw sound of pure agony and white-hot rage. Gareth watches, frozen in shock. Gareth looks to Sir Silas, begging him to step in. Another knight levels his crossbow, but Silas raises a hand. No, let him handle it. Sir Cedric roars at Arthur, demanding he slay the beast himself, asking him why on earth he's just standing there. Arthur is frozen, but then he flips the script. Fear turns into pure rage as he screams that the monster dies today. Suddenly, starlight flares in his eyes. From a distance, he strikes the killing blow, and everyone's jaw hits the floor. He's wounded, but he made it. He blinks and a divine interface flickers. Awakened, novice Star Watcher. Cedric shouts for a healer. All they have is a bone setter, but honestly, it's better than a grave. Wincing in pain, Arthur groans that he's seeing a divine window too. Cedric is relieved, but definitely worried. As Cedric hauls him up, Arthur actually jokes. For a monster, he says, that bite was pretty pathetic in the end. At least his leg is still attached. Cedric screams for the guard to stay sharp until the medic finally arrives. The chaos dies down, and just like that, 2 soldiers have officially awakened. The tide is turning. A new force is rising within the kingdom's guard, warriors capable of slaying terrors without a single arrow. But here's the problem. Word spreads fast, and panic hits the armory as every soldier scrambles to awaken. Some high-ranking lords, however, are absolutely terrified. Baron Thorn is fuming at their lack of spine. Thorn yells that fear is natural. He was scared too. But as lords, they must set the example for everyone. One man, Julian, flat out admits he can't do it. No way is he getting close to those claws without a guarantee of safety. People whisper. Julian's a specialist from the Logistics Guild, a man who knows exactly how dangerous this world is. It makes sense he's cautious. Julian is famous for having a 6th sense when it comes to avoiding death. Cedric is shocked, though. Julian looks like a mountain of a man, hardly the type you'd expect to back down. Thorn stops arguing. Julian thanks him, but Thorn's face is cold as ice. He's done talking. This choice, Thorn says, it just cost you your knighthood. Julian stands there, not quite getting it yet. Thorn explains that sitting in a fortress doesn't make you a leader anymore. The only leaders we need, those who have awakened. Julian chooses his path. He rejects the trial, knowing he'll have to live with that shadow forever. From Cedric's perspective, Thorn is right. There's no way Julian can lead knights into hell after this. Julian steps back, accepting his fate, and Thorn storms off in a blind, frustrated rage. Cedric knows this can't be the end. He asks Thorn for a private word and tells Julian to hold his post. Julian obeys, but he's no longer a superior in anyone's eyes. Thorn snaps, wondering what Cedric is up to. Later, in private, Cedric explains that giving up on their best men is not an option for the battalion. We can't let it end like this, Cedric insists. Thorn just looks lost, finally asking what he should do. This isn't just Julian's problem. It's a plague affecting the whole unit. Everyone is weighing the cost of courage. Every soldier is thinking about awakening right now. Thorn suggests the hesitation is because the monsters are still out there. The beasts are roaming free. If they don't act soon, Cedric warns of a total mental collapse within the ranks. Thorn points out they're trapped in the mountains. It's a full hour's ride just to reach the valley floor. They're safe for now because they're in a group. That's the only reason no one has deserted yet. But men want their families. They want to go home. And that desire is going to boil over eventually. Thorn agrees. To survive, the troops need to feel, no, they need to be completely unstoppable. But he points out that Julian isn't the only one who's terrified. The fear is spreading like a fever. If one man escapes the trial, the rest will beg for the same mercy, and the unit will crumble. That division will destroy them. Cedric stands firm. Refusal to awaken is simply not an option here. How, Thorn asks, how do we convince a man who's already accepted his own humiliation? Cedric smirks. I have an idea, just give me a little time. Thorn is skeptical, thinking it's impossible, but Cedric promises to give it his absolute best shot. As Cedric runs off, Thorn watches from a distance, wondering what a mere sergeant is planning. Cedric reflects. If he were a fighter, he might have fled, but he's a level 1 kitchen knight. He's a support role. To maximize his power, he has to cook, and he has to be the best at it. He refuses to let his brothers fall into despair. He is determined to make this unit the strongest in the land. Back in the kitchen, Cedric grabs his blades. Time to use his cooking to turn Julian into a real soldier. Arthur decided to whip up a simple feast of poultry and grains, prepping the ingredients before tossing them into the searing pan. The quality of the local meat was honestly pathetic, dragging the stats down, but his masterclass seasoning saved the entire meal. This wasn't just food. It was tailored for a specific night, and the Oracle's prompt warned that the effects would be massive. Then came the secret weapon, Arthur's special sauce, infused with his uncanny ability to weave raw emotions directly into the flavor. Confident in his craft, Arthur sent a page to fetch Sir Galahad to the Great Hall, ready to put his plan into motion. When the veteran knight arrived, he was served immediately, looking utterly confused until Arthur played it off as a simple act of kindness. He claimed Galahad barely ate properly these days and deserved something special, and looking at that perfect plate, who could say no? It was heart of the lion rice, designed to spark pure courage. Arthur had poured every bit of his soul into this meal. Every bite had Galahad singing its praises, and Arthur just smiled, encouraging the man to eat until his stomach was ready to burst. Silence fell for a moment. Once the knight was finally satisfied, the real conversation began. Galahad suddenly bowed his head, apologizing to the young healer and admitting the truth. He'd been a coward since the cradle. He'd been told to act like a true lord, to train in steel and combat, yet no amount of martial prowess ever touched his fear. Arthur listened quietly. He got it. Galahad had been fighting a war against his own nature for a lifetime. The knight confessed he took on every grueling task just to prove he wasn't a burden, desperate for any scrap of approval. He felt lucky people actually respected his efforts, but never in his wildest nightmares did he think he'd face true demons. He looked at Arthur with pure awe, amazed the boy could face such horrors even after seeing his own brothers-in-arms slaughtered. Arthur didn't play the hero. He admitted he was terrified too, but the choice was simple: fight or become monster fodder. He'd squeezed every drop of courage from his soul, just to seek vengeance for his fallen friends. It was a fleeting spark, driven by a raw survival instinct that simply wouldn't let him back down in that moment. Besides, Arthur is in the prime of his life. He's not about to die here. He still dreams of opening his own tavern. He knows survival takes immense courage, but he wants to reach the finish line with everyone else, and the veterans feel that fire too. Suddenly, Galahad roared with a newfound flame, declaring he was finally ready to do what needed to be done. Arthur smirked. The food had worked. Galahad's aura had shifted from a flickering candle to a raging bonfire. Without a second of doubt, the knight looked Arthur dead in the eye and demanded to be the one to slay the next fiend. Later at the training grounds, Galahad stepped up and punched a massive beast straight in the gut, shouting for no one to interfere. This was his trial by fire, his moment of truth. Everyone watching thought the man had finally lost his mind. The beast was still very much awake, and Galahad was taking it on with nothing but his bare fists. Pure insanity. Sir Cedric pulled Arthur aside, panicked. "What did you do to him? We have to stop this before he's killed." Arthur watched closely. Yeah, Galahad was being aggressive, but he told Cedric to wait. This was a rare chance they couldn't waste. Sir Alistair hated every second of it, but Arthur promised they'd jump in if the knight's life truly hung by a thread. The beast roared, lashing out with razor-sharp claws, but Galahad didn't flinch. He intercepted the strike with a brutal elbow counter. He screamed his own name, his voice thick with rage and pride. The atmosphere in the camp was absolutely electric. Even the skeptics were getting hyped, watching a man somehow overpower a literal nightmare with nothing but sheer grit. Even Alistair, who'd been against the plan, was now leaning in, wondering if the big man was about to awaken. But then, things got weird. A soldier pointed, his voice trembling as Galahad did the unthinkable. The knight lunged forward and bit the beast's arm, tearing away flesh like a wild animal. The cheering stopped instantly. Cedric was horrified, asking what in the world he was doing, but Galahad just shrugged it off like it was nothing. Arthur started sweating. Okay, maybe he went a little too heavy on that special sauce. He didn't expect this level of wildness. Galahad was absolutely dismantling the creature now. Alistair just stared, muttering that the knight was the real monster here. Ignoring the stares, Galahad grabbed a heavy stone and got back to work. The man was on a mission. With one final, sickening crunch, he drove the rock into the beast's skull. As it died, the oracle's golden light erupted. Silence. For 5 long seconds, no one breathed. Then, Galahad let out a thunderous, belly-deep laugh. He announced he could finally see the divine sight. The blue panel was hovering right in front of him. Awakening complete. The men erupted in cheers, swarming their leader. Even Alistair breathed a sigh of relief and offered his congratulations. Despite the terrifying show, the recruits agreed on one thing. That was the most epic bare-knuckle brawl they'd ever seen. Even with a welcome this warm, Duke Alaric looks cold as ice. Captain Alistair thanks the man, but the vibe, honestly, it's pretty hostile. Cedric is visibly sweating around the high officer again. Seeing this, Alistair realizes he needs to be way more careful the next time he brews his special mixtures. Naturally, the big question is, what did our hero do? How did he turn the Duke from a stone-cold commander into? Well, this. Alistair just shrugs. "I shared some bread and lent an ear," he says. Cedric is absolutely floored by such legendary persuasion skills. Alistair notes that hearts are simple things, but Cedric asks the real question. Is winning people over always going to be this easy? A mysterious smile is the only answer. No one ignores the power of being truly heard. Still, Cedric isn't buying it, not for a second. Deep down, Alistair knows his logic is total nonsense. It was all because of his secret divine skill, something he can't reveal just yet. This wasn't like swinging a kitchen blade or showing off raw strength. This was something different entirely. Seeing the Duke go from terrifying to gentle, that's a massive personality shift. Alistair realizes his magic could be incredibly dangerous if it ever fell into the wrong hands. He quickly switches the subject. Turning a kind man into a mindless berserker is a problem, but Cedric has other concerns. Survival. That's the only thing that matters when your life is on the line. Cedric knows the stakes are way too high for morals. Alistair makes a request. Bring all the blessed knights to the kitchen tonight. It's time for a proper feast. Cedric pauses. A feast, with our supplies. The Citadel's food stores are looking pretty grim right now. Alistair explains the plan. Most of the stockpile is just emergency hardtack. The fresh stuff, it's rotting as we speak. Use it or lose it. Perishables have to go before they rot into sludge. Plus, Alistair is absolutely starving for a real meal. Seriously, our captain is counting down the seconds until he can eat something that isn't rock-hard bread. But here's the catch. Will his cooking skills even work on dry, pre-packaged rations that don't need any prep? He's actually worried. Back at the barracks, pure chaos. A stray beast is frantically running for its life, while the knights try to corner the monster in the base. For the most part, the blessed soldiers are holding their own. Alistair watches, nodding as they show off their new power. But then, disaster. One beast meant for an awakening is killed way too early. Cedric explodes at his unit. Tensions are boiling over. The perfect teamwork Alistair saw earlier, yeah, that's starting to crack. The biggest problem is the finish. It's nearly impossible to get these monsters close enough for a trainee to deliver the final strike. These things are stubborn. The closer they get to death, the more enraged and resilient they become. They don't go down easy. Precision is everything. If the brigade rushes the awakening process, they'll lose everything. No room for error here. Then word spreads like wildfire. Alistair has done it. He successfully pinned down a beast for the next ritual. Cedric is ecstatic. Finally, someone who actually knows what they're doing. He rushes to the scene immediately. When the knights arrive, they find the perfect setup. Alistair has the monster exactly where it needs to be. Now they just need someone to finish the job. Next on the list, Sir Hugo from the transport unit. Hugo doesn't blink. He accepts the order with the steel resolve of a true knight. Cedric gives him a tip. Go for the vitals. One clean strike. Hugo has trained his whole life for a moment like this. Boom, one decisive blow, and the beast is dead. Right then, the glowing blue interface flickers into life before his eyes. I've awakened, Hugo shouts. He's a sharpshooter. That makes 5 blessed knights in the unit. Alistair asks about the new class, but suddenly, more system windows start popping up. Hugo looks genuinely spooked. He quickly reports the strange messages to his captain. Something about a formation. A faction formation. It's appearing to all 5 of them. 5 members, the magic number to start a group. Just like that, our hero has founded the very first order in the Iron Rock region. Alistair is still trying to wrap his head around it. The implications of these divine messages are still a total mystery. When Hugo rose up, every player in the world got the notification. Talk about a global announcement. And get this, congratulations are in order. They formed a faction so fast they snatched 3rd place worldwide. The reward, 10 growth elixirs. These aren't your average potions. They boost experience gain by a staggering 500%. Absolute game changers. Reality hits. The soldiers look to Alistair for the next move. He wastes no time. Emergency meeting for all the blessed. This is starting to feel exactly like a game, Cedric mutters during the sit-down. He's not wrong. 5 members. That was the hidden requirement to finally form an official order. Alistair ponders the elixirs. If the system is telling the truth, these potions will make their progress skyrocket. But Duke Alaric, he's not celebrating. He's actually annoyed they only managed to rank 3rd instead of 2nd. Talk about high standards. First, this terrifying realization sinks in. Monsters are likely swarming outside the kingdom's borders too. It is a total nightmare scenario. Talk of family safety erupts immediately among the men. But looking at the broken, dire state of their knights, it's impossible to imagine a happy ending elsewhere. Let's be real. At this point, most of their kin have probably been wiped out by those beasts already. It is a grim, heartbreaking truth. Arthur steps in, warning them not to drown in such dark thoughts. He's worried about the outside world too, but they cannot lose focus now. The unit's immediate safety has to stay the top priority. Commander Harold tries to argue the point, but Arthur cuts him off before he can even start. He reminds everyone that they are currently winning this twisted game. They have the lead, and they need to keep it. Reluctantly, Harold agrees with our hero. Survival is paramount if they ever want to find and rescue their families. But Quinn points out a harsh reality. They have 100 knights, yet only 5 are awakened. This makes the regular soldiers feel worthless, thinking only the awakened truly matter now. The atmosphere in the camp turns cold and heavy. Arthur knows the boy isn't wrong. The world shifted in a heartbeat. If you haven't awakened yet, You are barely even considered a human being anymore. By the way, Harold remembers that young Kay just landed the Master Marksman class. It must have been a gift for the boy's insane natural talent. Regarding those class traits, every shot is now deadlier, more power, perfect accuracy. Kay is basically a walking ballista at this point. Kay is impressed with his own power, but worried about what happens when the bolts run out. But Arthur just smiles. He tells the officer not to sweat it. Think about it, where a regular soldier needs 10 shots to drop a beast, Kay only needs 2. That is pure efficiency right there. Hearing this, Arthur is feeling pretty good. With skills like that on their side, clearing out monsters is going to be much faster and more efficient. Meanwhile, Noel is tasked with mastering monster control. Sadly, that is the only piece of good news the unit has received all day. Arthur feels relieved the unit can breathe for a second, but there is zero time to sit back in despair. Survival in this world requires constant progress. Naturally, they need to keep awakening the other knights. Most of the men are eager to try, but some are absolutely paralyzed with fear. When the fear takes over, our hero intervenes. A few minutes of talking with him, and the soldiers' personalities change completely. Every single time. Quinn is getting more suspicious by the second. He notices every soldier who speaks with Arthur comes back acting weirdly impulsive. It's the same behavior every time. Finally, Harold hits his breaking point and decides to confront Arthur. He's frustrated, shouting and accusing the hero of hiding something dark from them. Every man who talks to Arthur comes back different. Harold isn't wrong, and realizing he's been caught, Arthur admits everything. He claims it is for the good of the garrison. Thankfully, the commander understands the stakes and focuses on awakening the troops. Meanwhile, Arthur goes back to his favorite spot, the kitchen. While he's cooking, the system suddenly pings. 82 accumulated points. Arthur figures points are earned by either hunting monsters or, well, cooking like a pro. In games, points mean prizes. Arthur assumes there must be a shop feature hidden in his interface, and after a bit of searching, he finds it. The point shop is real. He dives in and finds battle axes, daggers, and rye bread. It is a classic RPG starter kit, honestly. Most of the items are for combat, and the only thing Arthur can actually use at this moment is that rye bread. Hey, a hero's gotta eat. He also spots potions that boost specific stats, but they are crazy expensive. He decides to come back later. Those potions are definitely going to be vital. Right now, our hero is relying on his special sauce, Boss's Eye, and Novice Dagger Mastery. That last one lets him move with the grace of a seasoned assassin. Training with Quinn has left him feeling pretty satisfied. He hasn't tried swords or brawling yet, but at least he's already a master with a kitchen knife. It makes him wonder, if his skills are this sharp at the novice level, how insane would a master-level skill actually be? The potential is terrifying. Oh, and he accidentally unlocked Beginner Flame Affinity just by touching a searing hot pan. Now he can hold literal flames in his hand for a few seconds. Then there is his Beginner Culinary Proficiency. Arthur tries to explain to Harold that his meals are boosting their stats, but no one else seems to notice. That is likely because the regular knights don't have a status window yet. Plus, the effects of the meals don't pop up as system messages for them. Think about it, if the system shouted about the food's effects, it would expose Arthur's secret instantly. Better to keep the chef's power a mystery. Arthur asks Kay how he's feeling, and the boy explains he feels way stronger. His strength has increased by 30%. The buffs are working, people. This confirms it. Arthur's abilities are definitely above average. Now, he just needs a way to provide that same massive boost to the entire garrison. Just then, a desperate knight bursts in, screaming for the surgeon. He's gasping for air, explaining that a new monster just appeared over the armory. But here is the kicker. This beast is entirely different from the armored monsters they've fought before. This is something else entirely. See, these regular guards don't have the sight. They can't see the magical essence yet. And those special meals Sela's prepared, they don't leave a trace. There are no magical scrolls or notifications announcing the buff. If the world's magic revealed the source, Silas's secret would be out in a heartbeat. Silas pulls Kay aside. How do you feel? Kay's eyes are wide. He's brimming with power. His physical strength has shot up by 30%. 30%. It's working. Silas knows if Kay is telling the truth, his own abilities are now officially beyond anything a normal human should possess. He's a powerhouse now, but Silas is already thinking bigger. How can he give this same godlike boost to every single soldier in the Iron Guard? Suddenly, the doors fly open. A soldier collapses, gasping for breath, screaming for a healer. He looks like he's seen a ghost from the abyss. Something at the Royal Armory. A new breed of nightmare. This isn't like the armored beasts they fought before. It's something far worse. They reach the fort's summit. The guard introduces himself to Lord Henry and Arthur. Arthur wastes no time. Where's the beast? The guard explains he was watching the perimeter when he spotted something. Well, different. It's unlike any scaled worm they've ever fought. Arthur grabs a looking glass and hands it to the commanding officer. From Arthur's view, the guard is visibly trembling. Both lords start scouring the horizon, hunting for the monster. Lord Hugh turns to our hero. See anything? Nothing, not at first. But then Arthur spots something truly bizarre. There it is, a nightmare hidden among the common drakes. Their eyes lock, and Arthur's heart sinks. The beast is charging straight for the garrison. It's massive, at least 10 feet tall, and it's not alone. It's leading a pack, a true alpha. Usually these drakes hunt in pairs of 2 max. Arthur knows this is wrong. Dead wrong. This giant, it's an outsider, and it brought 20 smaller beasts with it. The danger, off the charts. Captain Alistair says they'll need a mountain of arrows, but that's the least of their problems. They're outnumbered. Sure, they know the worm's weaknesses, but something about this feels sinister. Arthur gets to the point. When did it show up? The guard says it arrived at dawn. So far, it's just sitting there, right on the edge. Lord Hugh thinks the beasts are actually scared to move. Arthur isn't buying it. Why haven't they attacked yet? They have the numbers. Then it hits him. They're waiting, watching for a single opening. Arthur realizes the monsters, no simple traps won't stop them. They're surrounding the fort. The 2 blessed knights, completely rattled. Are they actually smart? Hugh asks. Arthur remembers that wolves are clever, but these beasts, they're on a whole different level. Alistair suggests a preemptive strike. Everyone's floored, but Arthur shuts it down fast. Their only edge is staying behind these walls. Leaving, suicide. Priority 1. Watch their every move and find a strategy that works. Alistair heads to the commander, while Arthur tells the men to stay sharp. Vigilance is everything now. Word spreads. The troops are terrified, and Arthur knows he needs to calm them before the fear of the unknown breaks them. Back to the kitchen. Arthur adds his special touch to the stew. The men eat, whispering that at least the fort is safe. For now. Arthur plates the special, spiced calamari. One soldier admits he was terrified at first, but with a full stomach. He's starting to relax. Beside the calamari, Arthur serves up roast boar with herbs. The soldier mentions his family. He's worried, but figures if he survived this nightmare, maybe they have too. Morale holds. The defense isn't crumbling yet. The count of blessed individuals hits 20. That's nearly half the entire garrison. Arthur notes nothing has shifted. The alpha is still lingering outside. But the pack, it just doubled. The guard's panic starts rising again. Arthur keeps him steady. Our numbers are growing too. Out of the blessed, 23 are elite marksmen. Their bows might be old, but these guys don't miss. Arthur believes they can win a counterattack. Every new blessed soldier makes the odds a little better. At the cellar, Arthur realizes they'll hit the emergency rations by next week. By then, half the men will be blessed. Without the buffs from Arthur's cooking, these troops would have bolted ages ago. Arthur's making a list of supplies when snap, a weird noise, then total darkness. The magic lamps go dead. Arthur's on high alert. The mages swore the mana crystals were stable. Did the whole fortress just go dark? Arthur suspects the worst. This wasn't an accident. The monsters planned this, and if they did, we're in massive trouble. Arthur bolts out. The fort is a sitting duck. He thought the archers could hold the line, but you can't shoot what you can't see. Without the light, those elite marksmen are completely useless. Across the base, the lieutenant screams for everyone to hit their posts. Archers to the roof, the rest of the blessed, get ready. The report is in. Every soldier is accounted for at the Iron Armory. Without skipping a beat, Commander Thorn orders the main gates sealed tight. The heavy iron doors are slammed shut and bolted. At this moment, they are just finishing the final defenses, and thank the heavens, they still have a few light crystals left. Alaric is not mincing words. These beasts aren't infinite, but if we don't end this battle fast, we are finished. Shifting focus, Alaric asks about the gifted warriors. Sir Hugo explains that he has positioned the ascended fighters right alongside the elite archers. The mages are split, some for offensive blasts, others for shielding the walls, while the knights take up their protective stances. Honestly, the men are ready for blood, all thanks to the special feast Alaric cooked up earlier. Those morale buffs are hitting different. Hugo looks at Alaric, wondering what his plan is, and Alaric just unsheathes his blade. Hugo naturally tries to stop him from heading to the front lines. But Alaric shuts him down. He was the first to ascend, after all. Not even the Lord Commander can tell him where he belongs when duty calls. Suddenly, a massive gale kicks up, followed by the ground beneath the fortress shuddering. It is starting. As the light stones illuminate the fields, everyone sees a sea of scales rushing toward the base. Every soldier grips their weapon, ready for the impact. Commander Thorn is absolutely trembling as he looks through his spyglass. The horde of scaled beasts is drawing dangerously close to the walls. Sir Hugo urges the call, and Thorn finally screams the command. Open fire on the 𝑭𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒆. A storm of arrows and steel rains down. Some beasts fall instantly, but dozens, maybe hundreds, just keep advancing through the carnage. The alchemical meals are carrying the men for now, but once those light crystals fail, we are in deep, deep trouble. Then, out of the chaos, the king emerges, the deadliest beast of them all. Every archer shifts their aim toward the massive threat. Squires scramble to get more enchanted arrows to the gifted soldiers, and Hugo growls that he is taking that monster down himself. Right then, Alaric's Seer's Gaze ability activates on its own. The system insight flashes. This lizard king is the rarest and most lethal of the pack. No other monster dares cross its path. It is also incredibly fast, moving like a blur and dodging every projectile fired its way. Alaric realizes right then that this thing is in a completely different league than the rest of the horde. Still, to Alaric, it doesn't matter how strong it is. It is a foolish move for a king to lead from the front lines like a common grunt. It just makes the beast a giant target for the gifted. But then, with a roar that could split the sky, the monster begins to chant. The sound hits the fortress like a physical wave, causing severe pain and disorientation to the troops. It's an ear-splitting war cry. The magic informs them that the soldiers have been hit by a powerful roar. Suddenly, the strength, speed, and vitality of every lizard increase tenfold. To make matters worse, their scales become resistant to steel. In contrast, all the human defenders are left dazed and confused. Hugo is terrified, asking Alaric what the hell is happening as he watches the state of his men. Alaric knows they are in serious danger. Reports flood in to Commander Thorn, who is paralyzed with shock. How can an ability like this even exist? There is no time to think. The common monsters are now charging much more aggressively, fueled by the king's magic. Sir Hugo remains on the battlements, clutching his head in agony. The effects of that roar are exactly as the system described. The defenses are literally collapsing. Sir Hugo screams at his comrades, demanding to know why they have stopped fighting. With a desperate shout, Hugo orders everyone to regroup and keep firing, even if their hands are shaking. Amidst the chaos, Alaric is at the front lines, personally subduing the beasts. He notices the rate of fire has dropped off a cliff. The king's debuff is too strong. Ordinary arrows aren't doing a thing anymore. All remaining enchanted supplies go straight to the gifted. Hugo is confused. Why wouldn't the beast use that roar at the very beginning? It doesn't make sense. Alaric recalls the system message. The effect is only temporary. That beast didn't just have muscle, it waited for the perfect moment. This thing is capable of high-level strategy and intelligent thought. It isn't just a monster, it is a general. Regardless, Alaric tells Hugo to gather all the gifted. Sniping from a distance is no longer an option. Everyone needs to prepare for close quarters hell. After explaining the shift, Alaric hands out special alchemical treats to each warrior. No one understands the point of a snack during a siege, so the hero decides to reveal the truth. Some of them have probably guessed it by now, but Alaric's cooking can actually amplify the powers of others. He reminds them of the food they ate before they even ascended. That wasn't just luck, it was his ability. Since he didn't know what the Horde would do, he prepared these specific treats with unique buffs for every individual fighter. Hugo rallies the men. Follow your training and this unit might actually survive. This is the only way to hold the base. If they secure the walls, they secure the future. By now, the entire battalion has been reinforced with Alaric's magic. Sir Gareth is given the ultimate task: take down the Lizard King. After eating his high-quality treat, Gareth doesn't hesitate for a second. Back on the rooftop, Sir Hugo looks down and once again questions what on earth everyone is doing. A scout screams from the ramparts that the line is breaking. He can't hold back the tide of beasts anymore. Down in the courtyard, the knights are locking their armor, feeling a sudden power surge just as the drakes clear the walls. The commander is shaking in his boots, but these noble warriors are ready, standing firm as the total chaos begins. Arthur steps up and sends a monster flying with one hell of a punch, holding his own even when they swarm him. It's a total bloodbath. Sir Henry is shouting orders, desperately trying to keep the formation from falling apart in the madness. One poor soldier gets backed into a corner, staring death in the face as a beast prepares to finish him off. But then, bam! Sebastian swings his heavy cleaver and splits the monster in two like it was absolutely nothing. The drakes are tougher than usual thanks to their leader's dark aura, and Sebastian knows he can't win this alone. He downs his own enchanted honeycake, and suddenly, his stats just absolutely skyrocket to insane levels. For 24 hours, he's a god, and that secret glaze of his, it's giving every soldier the heart of a lion. Those drakes aren't a threat anymore, not when our boys are fighting with the strength of 10 men under the buff. Morale shifts instantly. As Sebastian charges, the ancient decree flashes a message: new legendary traits are finally unlocking for the allies. Arthur is the first to feel it. All his fear and confusion just vanish, replaced by pure, unadulterated fire. He roars at his comrades to follow him into the fray today. They fight for honor and a glorious victory. The monsters are funneling into the main gate, and the whole legion slams into them, with Arthur leading the fearless charge. He clashes with the Drake King, fist against claw, while Henry watches from afar, absolutely stunned by the sheer power. Henry yells out, asking what kind of magic Sebastian used to boost them, but Sebastian is too busy killing to talk. Henry declares that with these buffs, they've already surpassed the enemy. Victory is now only a matter of time. Sebastian warns everyone not to celebrate just yet. They need to keep their guard up and stay focused. Hold the line against the small fry while William takes down the leader. Archers, provide long-range support now. Shield bash, arrows raining down. The garrison is working like a perfectly oiled machine against the encroaching darkness. Lightning strikes the field while Sebastian swings his blade, but his eyes are on Arthur, who is still fighting the king. That Drake King is a different breed. Arthur's landing hits, but the beast's resilience is just off the charts. Suddenly, the monster wraps its tail around Arthur's neck and tosses him like a rag doll across the cold stone floor. It moves in for the kill, but a brave knight leaps in the way to save the officer's life. Another warrior joins the fray, and together they manage to trip the massive beast with a very risky play. This is it, Arthur's time to shine. He sprints back in, jumps high, and delivers a blow that makes the earth tremble. He goes feral, biting and tearing at the monster with pure brutality until the beast screams out in agonizing pain. Arthur finally slaughters the Drake King. It's over. The remaining monsters are already being subdued by the rest of the men. Sebastian tells the officers to do a head count and confirm the status of the unit. No slacking until we're safe. The men are cheering, but Sebastian is just standing there, stunned they actually won without using any heavy siege engines. Suddenly, the ancient decree appears in the air, congratulating Sebastian for securing total control over Stonehaven Outpost. It informs him that their group has been officially designated as the 423rd Legion of the Realm. The decree also displays the global ranking for this massive war, though most of the specific numbers stay hidden. Nobody really understands what any of this means until the magic text clarifies the situation for the whole group. They were the very first group in the entire world to occupy a major territory. Now that is a massive win. Sebastian can't help but laugh out loud, celebrating their incredible first-place achievement as the great conflict finally cools down. But then, the adrenaline fades. A wave of despair sets in as a long line of wounded forms at the infirmary. It's a grim sight. Master Park is hauling stretchers as fast as he can through the blood and the mud. The clerics are the busiest people in the castle now, using every bit of their holy light to save the fallen. A flash of healing magic, and a soldier's scream turns into a sigh of relief as the pain finally vanishes. Henry wipes the sweat from his brow, muttering that the situation is finally stabilizing and the madness is ending. Sebastian tries to thank him for the hard work, but Henry insists the real credit belongs to the frontline heroes. Arthur and his partner are out cold on stretchers, completely spent after surviving the most brutal fight of their lives. Sebastian looks around for the High Commander, but Henry admits he has no clue where the man has gone. Arthur expected the news, but it still stung. He turned to Captain Alistair, asking exactly how much of the realm they could actually protect. Alistair pointed toward the great iron peaks. The divine scroll had signaled their victory. The entire ridge was officially under their banner. Right now, the King's Knights were dug in at the highest summit, the only thing standing in their way, a remaining swarm of scaled ravagers. The captain wondered if holding the most iconic landmark in the kingdom was the key to this magical recognition. If Alistair was right, their bloody defense against those monsters had earned them the right to call these mountains home. For Arthur and his band of survivors, this was a massive win, but Alistair wasn't done yet. He noted that yesterday's slaughter had absolutely crippled the Ravagers. His suggestion, strike now and wipe them out while they're bleeding. A solid plan, right? Wrong. Arthur shut it down immediately, knowing the grim reality of their situation. Alistair was confused, but Arthur reminded him of the sheer hell they'd just endured, and they'd had the high ground then. There is a world of difference between holding a wall and trying to climb one. Arthur wasn't about to lead his men into a meat grinder. The captain pushed back. We have the light now, our knights are stronger than ever. But Arthur just shook his head. He warned Alistair not to rely on the magical strength from his great feasts. Those meals took 7 hours and rare herbs to craft. Alistair froze. He'd assumed they were just, well, dinner. He had no idea the effort required to forge that power. Arthur had been preparing for this invasion for years, but repeating that feat now, impossible. The well was running dry. Alistair went quiet, realizing the weight of their logistics. Fine, they would have to deal with the hunger issues later. Changing the subject, the captain roared for the men to unload the next supply wagon. Duty called, after all. The battlefield was a mess, piles of monster carcasses that were too numerous to even burn. Arthur turned back to the divine scroll. He'd been staring at the reward options for an hour. He was paralyzed by the choice, so he asked Alistair for his take. Alistair just laughed. Pick one, lad. Nobody knows what these blessings actually do yet. But if our hero makes the first move, Alistair added, the rest of us will find the courage to follow. With the High Commander missing, Arthur realized the weight of leadership was on him. He took a breath and chose the Iron Citadel. Alistair raised an eyebrow, but Arthur explained his logic. The name alone promised a mobile fortress of pure steel. They didn't need a rolling castle today, but when the food ran out and they had to move, it would be essential. He wasn't entirely sure what would happen, but his gut told him this was the right call. That was enough for Alistair. He chose the same. Arthur closed his eyes and triggered the summoning ritual. A blinding golden aura erupted around him. Arthur reached out, calling the citadel into existence with everything he had. Nothing, then a cold message from the divine scroll. Insufficient space. Alistair was floored. What went wrong? Arthur looked at the ground. The corpses, he realized, too much clutter. They needed an open field and fast. They set off to find a clearing. Before leaving, Alistair barked orders at the knights to finish the cleanup. As they hiked, Arthur's mind raced. How massive was this thing? By nightfall, they still hadn't found enough room. It was beyond frustrating. He had this godlike power and couldn't even use it, but there was a silver lining. The scroll chimed. Arthur was gaining experience. Every time a soldier ate one of his magical meals, he grew stronger. Things were actually looking up. His own power was surging, and his troops were finally awakening to their true potential. Suddenly, a sharp rap at his door. Arthur opened it to find Lieutenant Sterling standing there with a serpent's grin. Arthur stood tall, offering the mandated respect for a superior officer, even if the man made his skin crawl. After acknowledging Arthur was resting, Sterling walked into the room like he owned the place, radiating false warmth. The man wouldn't stop talking. Compliment after compliment showered down on Arthur, but the hero wasn't buying it. Sterling was the type to vanish the moment steel met bone, only to reappear when there were medals to be handed out. Thank the heavens we're safe, Sterling sighed, though his face told a different story. But I'm afraid the news is grim. Arthur cut through the fluff. The scouts, the ones we sent to high command. Sterling just sat down, acting casual. They aren't coming back, the lieutenant remarked. Arthur's jaw tightened. He should have been the one to go. Then Sterling changed the subject. I hear the Great Hall is closed, and the men are eating dry travelers' rations. Arthur confirmed the news. The lieutenant pouted. And why is that? Why can't we have a proper feast? Arthur took a breath. We're low on supplies, sir. We have to be smart if we want to survive the week. Sterling scoffed, reminding Arthur that he hadn't been so stingy during the awakening. Arthur glared. That wasn't a choice, sir. Lord Alistair demanded to know what mystical feast the knights had eaten to survive the brutal rite of ascension. Arthur tried explaining the magical properties of his cooking, but Alistair wasn't buying it. Typical highborn skeptic. There wasn't much Arthur could do about it, since Alistair was the only high-ranking noble left in the garrison. Besides, if any royal legions survived in the outside world, Alistair would likely become a massive political player later. Arthur had no choice but to bite his tongue and comply with the Lord's arrogant demands. Sensing the tension, Sir Cedric got irritated and shouted that he'd just eat the damned provisions himself. Alistair finally let the matter drop, acknowledging their desperate situation, before storming out and slamming the heavy oak door. Even though Arthur had never touched a pipe before, the sheer stress made him consider lighting one up. Ever since the knights secured the mountain pass, the beast attacks had dropped by more than half. In the infirmary, Arthur updated Elias, who'd been badly mangled during his own ascension, on everything that happened. Elias had heard the story already, but thanked Arthur for the hard work. Arthur insisted everyone had played their part. Changing the subject, Arthur asked if any magic could heal Elias' leg, but Elias knew it was far too late. Despite the injury, Elias was in good health, though walking remained a nightmare. Arthur couldn't stop the guilt. He kept thinking that, if he hadn't pushed his friend to undergo the rite, things might have been different. Noticing the guilt, Elias reassured him. He didn't hold a single ounce of resentment toward Arthur. If they hadn't pursued the power of ascension so relentlessly, the monsters would have devoured them all by now. To the soldiers, Arthur was their savior, and 𝒂𝒑𝒆 urged him not to shoulder all that heavy guilt alone. That heartfelt speech really moved Arthur. Then, 𝒂𝒑𝒆 invited him outside to catch some fresh air. Once outside, 𝒂𝒑𝒆 explained his old life was as a royal stargazer, something Arthur didn't quite understand at first. He clarified that he could read the constellations to predict events or even glimpse the future through star charts. Arthur got hyped, realizing this ability was basically a human scouting beacon for the entire fortress. The skill had zero combat use, but it could detect danger before the blades even clashed, perfect for strategy. That's when 𝒂𝒑𝒆 revealed two things he'd seen, one of which was that the garrison would receive visitors tomorrow. Arthur immediately knew what that meant, and 𝒂𝒑𝒆 warned the young chef to keep his true power hidden. Next morning, a group appeared, shocked to find a standing military base in this monster-infested wasteland. They shouted for help, and a mother wept with pure relief, believing they might actually survive this nightmare. Without hesitation, they sprinted toward the citadel, which, for some strange reason, had its massive gates wide open. Earlier that day, scouts on the roof noted the travelers were about an hour away on day 11 of the siege. Arthur and an officer watched from the heights as a lone human began the steep climb up the mountain. Sir Cedric pointed out that the civilians were ignoring every sign, prohibiting entry into these restricted military zones. Arthur decided they'd give them shelter, even though Cedric didn't think it was the wisest move for their supplies. As they approached, Arthur wondered if these were the specific people 𝒂𝒑𝒆 had seen in his star charts. An hour later in the outer ward, a soldier struggled to calm the panicked villagers and form a line. Another soldier moved through the crowd with parchment and quill to register everyone while distributing fresh water. After the count, Cedric reported 25 survivors of all ages. For now, he suggested a change in quarters. He recommended moving the knights to the second floor, to leave the third floor entirely for the new arrivals. Arthur smiled, agreeing they'd start by cleaning the floor, while the Lord prepared to greet the refugees. Arthur asked if that was the High Commander, and Cedric confirmed Lord Alistair was here to play the lead. Alistair introduced himself as the unit commander, trying to win the crowd over with comforting, noble-sounding words. The civilians perked up, relieved to find a proper noble in charge instead of just a few ragged soldiers. Shifting gears, the refugees immediately asked about the troops' strength, and more importantly, if there was any food. Alistair barked that everything would be arranged once the paperwork was done, ordering a soldier to move faster. He pulled Arthur and Cedric aside, introducing them to the crowd as the highest-ranking officers under his command. Without delay, Alistair asked if the barracks had enough room for everyone. He wasn't wasting any time. Cedric confirmed there was space, and Alistair immediately tasked him with guiding the civilians to their new quarters. Sir Roland plans to settle things with Baron Alaric later, but for now, he needs any issues with our hero, 𝒂𝒑𝒆, reported immediately. With the villagers starving, 𝒂𝒑𝒆 is tasked with stretching the stew for 25 extra mouths, a brutal demand, but one they can't refuse. Increasing the rations by a quarter will bleed their supplies dry, yet the commoners still feel like lambs waiting for the slaughter. The Baron smirks, taking all the credit for the order, making 𝒂𝒑𝒆's blood boil, but Sir Roland signals him to keep his cool. They're stuck following orders. Before, the garrison was in chaos, but now that a noble like Alaric is in the citadel, the people blindly obey. It's all about titles and silver tongues. Alaric plays the part of the savior with fake smiles, and the desperate refugees fall for it every time. The guy is a pathetic commander, but Roland admits he's a master manipulator who knows exactly how to twist people's hearts. No time to waste. 𝒂𝒑𝒆 heads straight for the kitchens, while Roland assigns a few trusted men-at-arms to watch his back. The survivors begin the long trek up the citadel, stairs to their quarters. One old man is already whining about the climb to the third floor. Sir Alistair explains the harsh truth. In a siege, the ground floor is a death trap. The higher you are, the longer you live. The old man keeps grumbling about his aching bones. but most are just grateful for the chance to wash off the grime of war. There's no hot water, and though a few noble-born girls complain, most realize this fortress is a sanctuary, not a luxury estate. Finally, the dinner bell rings. The weary crowd gathers in the great hall, desperate for a taste of whatever 𝑭𝒏𝒆 has prepared. One bite of the simple grain, and the room goes silent. They've never tasted anything so divine. It's like a feast fit for a king. 𝒏𝒆 is still reeling from how fast his life flipped upside down, but seeing the smiles on their faces makes the chaos worth it. Still, the shadow of hunger looms. At this rate, they'll be eating through their emergency hardtack and running on empty within a month. A traveler approaches to offer their thanks, breaking 𝒏𝒆 out of his dark thoughts. He nods back, but the blonde traveler leans in, eyes sharp, asking what his true trade was before the world fell apart. It's a strange question for a man in armor. 𝒏𝒆 almost says royal cook, but catches himself, claiming he was just a simple scholar. They leave, but the interaction leaves him uneasy. Why was she so interested in his past life? Trade and class aren't just names anymore. They've become exclusive, visible only to those who have awakened the divine sight. Most would show up as warrior or cleric, and 𝒏𝒆 realizes this must be the secret the knight commander mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, Sir Roland is pacing the halls, looking miserable. He's not just fighting monsters now, he's babysitting an entire kingdom of survivors. Outside the walls, the soldiers are reaching their breaking point. The world is ending, and they haven't slept in days. One guard snaps, declaring he's finished taking orders from a noble who's only making the nightmare worse. They're all thinking it. The Baron is a liability, and the men would much rather follow the veteran knights who actually bleed with them. The whispers of mutiny are growing louder as the garrison finds common ground in their hatred for 𝒂𝒏𝒆's cowardice. Roland catches the tail end of the conversation, his face a mask of grim realization. Later, his own men corner him, venting their fury about the Baron's uselessness and his obsession with highborn etiquette. He's untouchable because of his bloodline, one soldier spits, and that's exactly what's going to get us all killed. They're fighting a war against the Dark Horde, and a commander who hides behind his title is nothing but dead weight. The men look to Roland for an answer, but he stays silent, his mind racing. He's always known 𝒂𝒏𝒆 was a snake. There's zero respect for a lord who vanishes the moment swords are drawn. If this keeps up, the garrison's spirit will shatter. Roland knows he has to act. For the sake of the kingdom, something has to change, and fast. That night, a secret assembly gathers on the moonlit ramparts. No one knows why they've been summoned at such an hour. Roland stands before them, his voice heavy as he apologizes for the late call, but the tension in the air is thick enough to cut. He cuts straight to the bone. He met with Baron 𝒂𝒏𝒆 to demand he lead from the front. The crowd leans in, every eye fixed on the commander. They want to know if there's any hope. But there was no miracle. Roland and the others begged him to join the fight, and 𝒂𝒏𝒆 just laughed in their faces. The Baron's response: he wouldn't take orders from low-born filth. A deathly, heavy silence falls over the battlements. Then the rage boils over. The men finally see 𝒂𝒏𝒆 for what he is, a tyrant who would watch them die for his own comfort. Even 𝒏𝒆 is stunned. He knew the man was arrogant, but this level of cold-hearted betrayal was beyond anything he imagined. This isn't just about politics anymore, Roland warns. This is about staying alive. He drops the bombshell. Their new objective is to remove Baron 𝒂𝒏𝒆 from power by any means necessary. The group freezes. It's treason. It's madness. Even 𝒏𝒆 stares at his comrade, asking if they can truly dethrone a lord of the realm. Time is running thin, and 𝒂𝒏𝒆 is starting to wonder just how much longer he can keep carrying this dead weight. Let's be real. Lieutenant Thorn is still a high-ranking noble officer on paper, but as more survivors flock to the Iron Guard. The ranks are swelling. Hubert drops the hammer. What happens if Thorn remains the face of this regiment in the High Council meetings? Eventually, the masses will start believing the lieutenant is the true power behind the throne. At that point, the lower-tier captains lose all their authority in the battalion. Young barks out, is he wrong? Thorn has 0 combat strength. There's absolutely no reason to keep playing follow the leader with him anymore. The realization hits the room like a physical blow. How have they followed such an incompetent noble for this long? But they're still soldiers at heart. They can't just erase him. Thorn did his duty before the great collapse changed everything. Quint, on the other hand, thinks this smells like a trap. Internal betrayal. That's basically modern magical warfare, and it's messy. Hubert nods. Exactly. That's why they need to strike fast and cut Thorn out of the loop immediately. The top seats in the garrison go to Alaric, Hubert, and the elite knights. Even the common footmen will get to lead if the officers fall. It won't be an issue, because Alaric is the one truly steering this ship now. Honestly, the whole reason Hubert called this secret meeting was to purge Thorn's toxic influence once and for all. Some knights are still salty about having a cook as their lord commander, but Alaric reminds them he's the one filling their plates. He's the source of their magical blessings. Hubert's plan takes center stage because Alaric's leadership is already a stone-cold fact. Any objections? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Alaric can feel the tension. The soldiers are still on the fence. But then they start remembering the way Alaric always looked out for them, comforting them with a hot meal after a brutal fight. They realize they can actually trust this guy. After all, it was Alaric's food blessings that helped them survive the recent monster siege. Hubert scans the room. Silence. Alaric is sweating bullets, but not a single soul speaks up against him. It's official. Hubert appoints Alaric as the new Lord Commander. Alaric tries to decline, but Hubert isn't taking no for an answer. Suddenly the system flares to life. All conditions met. 30 warriors, check. 1 recognized leader, check. A great house has been formed, the first in the Shire and the second in the entire kingdom. The reward, a legendary sigil. Alaric is named the head of House 423. A new title appears, Lord Provisioner of the Realm. This is it, a new chapter. Sir Alaric has to lead the entire unit now, and he resolves to do the job right. His first act as commander, keeping Lieutenant Thorn alive. Yeah, that decision confused the hell out of Hubert and Quint. Everyone is begging him to reconsider, but Alaric stands his ground. Just listen to me, he tells the troops. If they start tossing people aside for convenience, they'll be alive in body but dead in spirit. To stay human, they only kill if attacked first. He makes them swear to this code of honor. Sir Kevin can't help but feel a massive surge of pride for his new leader. Still, the question remains, why keep a useless noble like Thorn around? Alaric clarifies, Thorn is just a problematic soul right now. Tossing him out is a waste because he'll definitely be useful later. This leaves everyone even more baffled. What on earth is their new commander actually planning? Later, on the 3rd floor of the fortress, a civilian scout spots the troops returning to base. A blonde aristocrat remarks on how the soldiers slipped out in the dead of night. His companion asks if it's a problem. The blonde shakes his head. Nothing alarming. Yet, they're just a bunch of 20-somethings in armor. But he notes the captain seems remarkably strong, even if he wasn't the one leading the march. The blonde shifts focus. Did his spy check the request? The answer is a firm yes. 0 god-touched individuals were found. Another scout watched closely. The soldiers were just using basic steel to kill the beasts. The blonde leader concludes there probably aren't any awakened warriors among them. Now might be the perfect time to strike. But he's playing it safe. Just a few more days of waiting to be absolutely sure. The next day, the mess hall is buzzing. Everyone is gathering for a proper, hearty meal at last. Alaric examines his house sigil. It can grant massive stat bonuses depending on how many people join the order. The system tells him to pick an object to represent the group and transform it into the token. Everyone gets the buff. It's an insane power boost, but Alaric is stumped. He doesn't have a single item that truly represents the house. He had his doubts yesterday, but Hubert reminded him of how the knights reacted. By now, the legend of Sir Alaric slaying a monster with nothing but a kitchen knife has spread everywhere. No one opposes him. Alaric's command was ironclad. The men followed him because he was a rock, unlike Lord Cedric, who was basically a coin toss. 1 minute Cedric was a raging tyrant, the next he was as soft as silk. In the end, Alaric was the only man fit to lead. Down in the keep's heart, a knight salutes Alaric. The commander asks a simple question: did the orders reach every man? The knight nods. Loud and clear, sir. Whenever someone asks about their business, they play it cool, no titles, no talk of status. Alaric had one rule above all: don't breathe a word about their awakening powers. Keep that magic under wraps as much as possible. Why? Because an ace up your sleeve is useless if everyone sees it coming. It was all about the tactical edge. Besides, secrecy wouldn't slow them down. They still had their elite longbowmen, a deadly force growing by the day. But there's a snag. The survivors are getting restless, constantly begging for an audience with the new leadership. One woman in particular won't take no for an answer. Alaric asks if it's vital, but the guard only knows she's their leader. She's the voice of the commoners. Alaric realizes he has to be the one to step into that room and face her. Part of him is wary of how the knight commander might react, but Alaric reassures his soldier he'll handle the lieutenant himself. Don't sweat the small stuff, Alaric says. He's already got a plan. Step 1, deal with that favor right now. He summons 3 representatives from the survivor group for a meeting after the sun sets. Rule number 1, total silence. Alaric begins prepping a massive pot of savory stew, clearing out the space near the Great Hall. The man knows his way around a hearth. The soldiers watch, confused, as their new commander descends into the cold, damp stone vaults beneath the keep. What's he doing down there? One asks. Another explains there's a hidden chamber beneath the hall for the furnaces and water. It was built to keep the castle warm and the water running, but the men whisper it's being used for something else now. It's definitely not a storehouse. Down in the dark, Alaric thinks back to Sir Magnus's idea. This place is a perfect cage. It's the keep's only dungeon cell now. Without wasting time, Alaric brings a steaming plate to his one and only highborn prisoner. The prisoner looks up, eyes bulging in shock. It's Lord Cedric, staring at his former cook who's now his warden. Just yesterday, the plan was set into motion. They stormed the Lord's private chambers before he could even blink. A knight named Helen unleashed a surge of lightning magic. One strike, and the noble was out cold, no defense needed. Back in the present, Cedric looks pathetic. He starts mumbling apologies, promising to make things right with every soldier he offended. Alaric is baffled. Then Cedric admits he spilled wine on the scouting maps and blamed a poor sentry for the mess. He thinks he's locked up for some minor mistake during the castle inspection. He has no clue how deep he's buried. Alaric almost feels for him. Sitting in a dark hole with 0 answers, that's enough to break any man's spirit. Cedric keeps venting, listing every blunder and every ego trip he's ever had. He's finally realizing he was a terrible leader. "Help me out here, Alaric," he begs, but the hero just shakes his head. The soldier's resentment, it's far too deep. The weight of reality finally crashes down. Cedric slumps against the wall, accepting his fate in the shadows. It's hopeless. He starts seeing the ghosts of every officer who died under his failed command. It's a long list. Alaric offers a tiny bit of comfort. He'll keep trying to talk sense into the men, and he'll make sure the meals stay top tier. Cedric is actually touched. Imagine that, a noble feeling guilty for accepting kindness from the man he once looked down on. It's his favorite dish. Cedric takes a bite, and for a fleeting second, the dungeon walls seem to disappear into flavor. Pure magic. Tears start streaming as he tastes the incredible flavor. He actually feels happy. He feels alive. Alaric watches him. Maybe this wasn't a bad call. Let the man savor one last moment of joy before reality hits again. He thinks back to when Sir Tristan questioned his choice to cook dragonkin meat. "Is this even food?" they asked. It was a desperate move for a starving army. The surgeon even asked if the meat was poisonous or just plain gross. Alaric wasn't sure himself, but with the grain stores empty, he had to experiment with some pretty wild ingredients. He discovered something insane. When you lace your cooking with pure mana, the flavor and power just explode. That's when he earned the title of Pioneer, a reward for the brave souls who carve out new paths in their craft. With a 100% boost to his skills, Alaric thought it'd be a fun twist to use it on the captive lord. He finished the roasted meat, infusing the pottage with pure magical bliss. Since it was a first, his experience skyrocketed. Back in the cell, Cedric is raving. He hasn't had a proper meal in ages, and he feels like a king again. He's practically glowing with pleasure as he finishes every last drop. He feels amazing, better than he ever has. Meanwhile, Alaric just smiles and repeats the process, feeding the prisoner every day. It's the perfect, delicious irony. Elias had Lord Percival exactly where he wanted him, addicted. After days of magical feasts, he just stopped. No more gourmet meals, just dry, miserable hardtack. Percival went absolutely feral. Withdrawal is a real beast. Hook, line, and sinker. The plan worked, and Elias knew it was go time. From the side, others were baffled by this weird feeding ritual. Master Healer Thorn was lost. He actually started suspecting that Percival just had a bizarre obsession with drake meat. But when Elias requested yet another vile drake, the pieces finally started falling into place for the onlookers. Down in the dungeon, Percival was screaming, demanding a real meal, full-on noble tantrum mode. Elias wasn't having it. He made it clear that bad attitude gets no food. Cold, but necessary. Calculated? Absolutely. Elias knew the crushing void a man feels after losing true happiness. Percival tried pulling rank, invoking his authority as a lord to demand his dinner. Yeah, that didn't work. Elias' response, "Fix your attitude or I'm out for the day." A total power move that left the noble stunned. Panic mode. Percival started pleading, promising to do anything Elias asked. Finally, the chef agreed, but with one condition. They moved straight to the Hall of Ascension, the place where new legends are born. Percival was a total gamble for Elias, and the noble was shaking in his boots. Pure, unadulterated terror. The price for a meal? Kill a beast. Percival did what he had to, surviving just to eat again, and awakened as a level 1 squire commander. Talk about a shock. His new ability, a massive 10% stat boost to every ally nearby. Game changer. 10%. That was way better than Elias had even hoped for. He'd hit the jackpot with this one. While Percival was panicking for answers from the troops, Elias was busy thanking his lucky stars. Here's the math. Fixed boosts are great for weaklings, but percentage-based increases. Those are the real endgame. As the vanguard gets stronger, that 10% buff only gets more terrifying. This means as the troops level up, Percival's ability becomes exponentially more effective. Absolutely brilliant. Boom, the ancient mark awarded him the Irresistible Flavor achievement. The prize, a literal dragon's heart. Elias hits level 10. Promotion time. He is now a journeyman culinarian level 1. The realization hits, mastery is the only path. Now his stats jump by 2 every single level. Huge power-up. Every basic talent he had, replaced with journeyman tier abilities instantly. He's evolved. He was a monster with apprentice skills. Now, he's in a completely different league. Next up, the latest batch of battle rations was already finished. Elias was feeling the flow. This skill is a lifesaver. Preserved food for the absolute worst-case scenarios. He loves it. Not as tasty, but packed with energy and lasts forever. It makes feeding an entire army a breeze. Reflecting on it all, Percival turned out to be a goldmine. But with that settled, time to deal with the survivors. Later, during the gathering, the man in charge was ready to start, but someone noticed the Lord was missing. Elias just played it off. Lord Percival was unwell from the meals. Naturally, everyone was just confused. Elias tapped Sir Julian, the most educated man in the unit, to lead the talk. Julian saw right through it. "You're just dumping the paperwork on me, aren't you?" Julian sighed. Elias didn't even try to deny it. "I'm the leader, but I'm not a micromanager." Translation, "You do the boring stuff." With that, Julian headed in. Elias wished him luck. In the dormitories, Julian and his team found the room already packed. As they took their seats, the air turned ice cold. You could feel the tension radiating off everyone. Elias was certain of it. There was a snake in the grass, someone there intended to bury the unit. The strategy: play it cool, hide their true strength and gather every scrap of intel possible. Master Healer Thorn stepped up to facilitate. Immediately, a noblewoman demanded to know where the Lord was. Julian kept it professional, operation leaders only. But her reaction, it caught Elias' eye immediately, suspicious. Then came the blonde aristocrat. Talking to common soldiers is pointless, he sneered, classic arrogance. Julian stood his ground. He and Elias were the highest-ranking officers present, period. Then came the interrogation. Why the 3-day delay? Julian didn't flinch. He explained it was for rest and identifying the right leaders, since everyone else was busy with actual duty. The blonde accused Julian of putting work over people, but Julian, he stayed as solid as a mountain. The bickering just won't stop, and it's seriously grating on Arthur's nerves. He's seen this type before, the kind of arrogant noble who thinks the whole world exists just to follow his orders. This blonde idiot, Percival, keeps preaching about how knights should serve the people first. Finally, Alara has had enough. She snaps, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. She tells Percival to shut his mouth, shocking everyone in the room. She makes it clear that the Citadel's knights didn't have to give them the time of day, much less a seat at their table. "Quiet, Percival," she commands. In that one moment of pure authority, Arthur realizes exactly who's actually running this group. The meeting finally gets back on track. Alara apologizes for Percival's ego, while Commander Alastair plays it cool, admitting the garrison was perhaps a bit slow to grant them this audience. She introduces herself as Lady Alara. Before the kingdom fell into shadow and monsters roamed the roads, she ran a high-end boutique in the city. Alastair is visibly relieved she made it to the fortress in one piece. But then, he cuts to the chase. He wants to know exactly how they managed to find this hidden stronghold. Percival backs off, letting her take the lead. Watching this, Arthur feels a surge of pride in how his fellow knights are keeping their composure and handling the situation with total professionalism. Alara begins her tale. 2 weeks ago, the world simply broke. Without warning, the monsters appeared, and everything changed in a heartbeat. Silence followed. No messengers, no magic comms, no word from the capital. Just pure, terrifying isolation as the world went dark. That's when the slaughter began. Every kind of beast imaginable attacked, and the poor souls who were wounded but didn't die. They rose again as the hollowed. This news hits the 2 knights like a physical blow. Total shock. They've seen plenty of scaled beasts so far, but they haven't encountered any of these hollowed yet. Alastair and Arthur exchange a wary look. They've been fighting drakes, not the walking dead. This is unexpected, and Alara notices the shift in the room immediately. "Is something wrong?" she asks, her eyes narrowing. Alastair recovers instantly, brushing it off with a quick excuse about the terminology they use in the military. He tells her they simply don't use the word zombie. The survivors look confused. To them, these things were clearly human once. They want to know what the knights call them. Alastair improvises on the fly, calling them the Risen. Arthur doesn't quite get the logic, but the villagers seem to recognize the term from old legends and bard tales. They actually seem to like the name, even considering adopting it themselves. But then Alastair backtracks, admitting the hollowed is probably more accurate anyway. Alara accepts the correction. Arthur thinks Alastair is being a bit clumsy with the lie, but hey, the plan worked and the tension is gone for now. Alara's story continues. She was running for her life, desperate to escape the claws of the dead, when she stumbled upon a small band of survivors. While searching for a sanctuary, one of them mentioned a secret fortress hidden deep in the mountains. That man is the old laborer currently sitting in the corner. Percival pipes up, demanding to know how a commoner knew about a secret military base. The old man explains he had a friend in the stonemasons' guild. His friend had mentioned working on a massive project deep in the peaks, a fortress meant to withstand any siege. The group didn't have a map, but they were desperate. They had to head down the mountain slopes anyway, so they decided to gamble everything on finding this legendary Ironhold citadel. Alistair nods, acknowledging that their journey must have been a nightmare. Arthur, however, is looking at their gear, or lack of it, just one rusted metal pipe. How, Arthur asks, genuinely curious. How did you survive the monsters with nothing but a pipe? Alara answers simply, we awakened. It clicks for Arthur. He knew it. You don't make it through that kind of hell without a spark of power. But then she drops a bombshell. Out of 25 survivors, she claims she is the only one who awakened a gift. She was the one who personally fought off the beasts to keep the others safe. This catches Arthur's attention. It's strange, statistically, having only one gifted person in a group that size feels off, very off. Seeing their skepticism, Alara stands up. She's going to prove it. With a confident smile, she pulls 2 pairs of sewing shears from the back of her cloak. She explains these are just ordinary tools she used back in her shop for fixing curtains and tailoring fine silks. Arthur remembers her background now. She was a simple seamstress, someone who likely gained her ability through her craft. Without a moment's hesitation, she presses the shears against the heavy oak table. Snip, she cuts through the solid wood like it was made of wet paper. Alistair is floored, and Arthur gets that familiar, tingling sensation of magic in the air. After showing off, Alara recounts her awakening. She was working in her shop when the monsters burst in. In her desperation, she grabbed her shears. Just as a creature was about to tear her throat out, she drove the blades home. That's when the golden celestial sigil appeared before her eyes. It granted her supernatural strength. Now, she claims she can take the head off one of the hollowed with a single, effortless movement of her wrist. Arthur starts theorizing. Maybe the conditions for awakening against the dead are different than fighting the drakes. But why only her? He asks her why no one else found their spark, but she doesn't have an answer. Arthur wonders if just killing a monster isn't enough to trigger the gift. Still, the whole situation feels suspicious. A few days ago, Commander Tristan warned them that someone might be plotting against the garrison from within. Arthur finds it very hard to believe she's really the only one. Is she hiding the others? Alistair changes the subject, asking if she knows how the awakening works. She admits she's clueless. As far as she can tell, it's completely random, like being struck by lightning. Alistair thanks her for the honesty. He offers to help her whenever the group needs it. Arthur reads between the lines. It's a way to keep a very close eye on her without being obvious. Ultimately, Arthur decides they aren't here for a fight. Betraying the Citadel would be a death sentence for their entire group, and they know it. Alistair moves to wrap things up, offering to explain the Citadel's current situation. Alara is visibly grateful, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. Then the commander turns to Percival, telling him to clear the table and prepare some leftover rations for their guests. But our hero sees an opportunity here. Lady Alara nods her thanks. Silas tells Quentin to clear the table and prep the leftovers, but our hero has a different plan in mind. Arthur's mind is racing. Traps, beasts, the blighted. He needs a plan to keep the stronghold safe. Without intel, his knights are walking blind. But then, a knock at the door, 2 visitors. The girls finish the chores and report in. Arthur thanks them. It's just payment for the meal, one says. Arthur's got a surprise, freshly prepared treats. Come on, he says, give these a try. They're thrilled. He makes it clear, this isn't a bribe, just a gift for their hard work. Especially the dark-haired girl. Arthur plays it cool, saying it's just leftover ingredients, nothing fancy. They dive into the chilled sweet cream. But this isn't ordinary dessert. It's laced with his essence of bliss. The strategy, simple, start a rumor. Work hard around the castle, get the legendary treats. One bite is all it takes. The buzz starts instantly. I didn't think it could be this good, she gasps. But her friend is staring, confused. Why? Because that girl hasn't smiled since her noble house fell. I just felt like it, she says, seeing that smile. The dark-haired girl just starts sobbing. Pure relief, The smiling girl tries to calm her. "Enjoy the treat," she says. "Don't cry over it." Arthur knows the truth. Her grief is buried deep. This joy, it's artificial, temporary. But even when the magic fades, that feeling of happiness, it leaves a mark. It heals the soul. Just like it did for Thomas. It works. Arthur realizes this sweet strategy is his best weapon. Later that night, Cedric brings the news. He's found the room where that suspicious scout is staying. 5 men all knew each other before the kingdom fell. Suspicious, absolutely. They might be a coordinated cell. Cedric isn't taking chances. Friends or not, they're a threat. What now? They can't just execute them. That would spark a revolt among the other survivors. Cedric agrees. Risks are too high, but waiting, that's worse. More blessed enemies could appear. Arthur has the answer. Get them to eat. Get them to talk. Let the food do the interrogation. The survivors are cleaning the hall tonight. Arthur suggests picking one to help him in the kitchen. The same trick he played on the lieutenant. Cedric watches his friend's confidence and nods. "Let's do it," the physician agrees. But then he asks, does Arthur have powers beyond simple buffs? Arthur freezes. Caught off guard, it's a heavy question. Cedric doesn't push. He knows secrets come out eventually. But he gives one warning, be careful. If people find out the food is a trap, nobody eats again. Arthur understands the stakes perfectly. He'll be subtle, ensuring his magic remains a ghost in the kitchen, undetected. The date is set, and honestly, things move way faster than they expected. The new assistant is efficient. He finishes the work quickly, looking for praise. Time for the trap. Arthur brings out the legendary sweet cream. The young man's eyes widen. "The chef's cream," he exclaims. Rumors travel fast in a desperate castle. Everyone's talking about it. Arthur apologizes for the limited supply, and the man totally understands. First bite, the man is floored. The flavor, perfection. He finally gets the hype. Arthur smiles. Of course it's good. He poured everything into this batch. This version, even more potent. No expense spared. Pure, unfiltered magical influence. The man finishes every drop. "I haven't had anything this good in years," he sighs. Now for the real work. Arthur starts the questioning. The man is happy to oblige. Why the questions about Arthur's job? The man blabs immediately. No hesitation at all. "We needed to know if you were blessed," he admits. "If you were, we'd have to change tactics." He felt relieved when he thought Arthur was just a normal cook. But then, panic set in. His mouth was moving on its own. He couldn't stop. Words were just spilling out. "What if I was blessed?" Arthur asks. The man confesses they would have waited, acted in the shadows. But since they thought he was weak, they lowered their guard. He realizes what's happening. His body isn't his own. He's trapped, forced to tell the truth. He's in deep trouble now. As he tries to bolt, Alistair stops him cold with a single command. "Wait," our hero says. "There's one more thing I need to know." A strange force binds the man, making him halt against his will to face the next question. Alistair wants to know exactly how many comrades he has and who's calling the shots. The truth comes spilling out. 5 ascended knights are in on it, led by a man named Percival. Suddenly, it clicks. That's the loudmouth who is always whining about Commander Cedric's absence. Alistair isn't done. He demands to know exactly what this group of 5 is plotting to do together. The confession is chilling. They're planning a coup at the Iron Fortress. After scouting for days, the group decided there were no other ascended or real threats left in the base. Since they think everyone else is weak, the plan is to strike tonight. No more waiting, it's go time for their operation. Alistair is stunned by the revelation, but the traitor just laughs. He warns that the bloodbath starts the very second he returns to his crew. This is bad, real bad. Alistair braces himself as the man lunges forward, ready to kill his way out. The rebel calls upon his fire magic, whipping up a massive spiral of flames. He was confused by Alistair's power before, but now, he thinks he has nothing to fear from a mere cook. Big mistake. He truly believes his flames will make short work of a man who spends his time in the kitchen. It's a sudden, vicious strike. With their secrets out in the open, the rebel knows he has to eliminate the chef to keep their identity hidden. As a fireball screams toward him, Alistair gives a warning. "You're underestimating the master of the hearth." See, a chef knows fire better than anyone, and Alistair has the perfect counter. Using his own fire affinity, Alistair effortlessly scatters the flames. It's official. The rebel picked the absolute worst opponent for a fire fight. Pure despair sets in. The man can't believe his ultimate ability was neutralized that easily. Time to end the charade. Alistair activates the Sovereign's insight, the system highlighting every single weakness in the man before him. Vulnerable points appear everywhere. Alistair gives him one last piece of advice. Prepare yourself. The rebel screams in a blind rage, but Alistair doesn't give him a second to think. He charges forward, his chef's steel flashing as he delivers a finishing strike. Later that evening, the rest of the traders gather, getting restless because their companion hasn't returned. Lord Percival, their leader, keeps a grim expression. Something feels wrong. Percival senses trouble brewing, but they've already waited too long. "We move now," he announces. They're proceeding with the coup even without their strongest man. One of the others wonders if they can actually pull this off. Percival snaps. He yells that they still have 4 ascended warriors against a bunch of weaklings on the other side. But some of the troublemakers are starting to worry. What if their math is off? Their missing comrade was level 6, a vital powerhouse for the group. But as the leader, Percival has to stay resolute. "Do you trust me or not?" he demands. He assures them that their friend will join the slaughter later. Percival is fuming now. He orders the squad to hurry up and round up every soul from the barracks. The courtyard fills up quickly. People are freezing and furious about being dragged out of bed in the middle of the night. Lady Alina is annoyed too. She demands to know what Percival is playing at, but he just smiles. He likes the feeling of leading others. Percival has always been a violent brute, but he's surprisingly polite when he's facing Alina. This prompts Alina to ask if being the leader of their small band wasn't enough for his ego. Percival scoffs. 5 people? That's far too small for his ambitions. He wants the entire fortress under his control, only then will he be satisfied. Alina finally sees the play. While they argue, the civilians are getting loud, sensing the danger of the situation. Inside the main building, the garrison soldiers are watching the courtyard. What are those outsiders doing? One soldier explains they just marched down and started a massive argument. The garrison hates this. As long as these survivors are in the castle, they should be following orders, not making their own. Alina admits she had a feeling these boys would cause a disaster one day. Backed into a corner, she draws her specialized twin blades from her cloak. The civilians are terrified. Is a civil war starting right now? Percival doesn't flinch. He knows exactly how dangerous her blades are, but he isn't backing down. Alina is confused. Why does Percival think he can take her on with just 4 regular guys? Before she can finish the thought, a second member steps forward. "I'll handle her myself," he sneers. Knowing Alina's strength, Percival sends a third man in for backup. Alina realizes something is very wrong. They're too confident. Then it hits her they're all ascended, every single one of them. The revelation sends a shockwave through the crowd. They've been deceived by these men from the very start. No more talking. Percival roars for the fight to begin. 2 warriors charge straight toward the unarmed civilians. Alina leaps forward to defend them, but the second member provides support, launching mysterious golden orbs of energy at her. She's fast enough to cut them all down, but the dread is setting in. She's outnumbered and deeply concerned about what's coming next. Faced with 2 blessed opponents at once, Lady Alara starts to wonder if she actually stands a chance in this fight. Amidst the terrified commoners, the rogue leader, Lord Alaric, remains dangerously calm, confident he can crush this obstacle. With a brutal punch, his lieutenant mocks Alara, calling her a joke who can only handle mindless ghouls, before his comrade tells him to quit playing and get serious. Watching them, Alara realizes their teamwork is total trash. and there is her opening to flip the script and gain the upper hand. The second attacker lunges at 𝑭𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒆, desperate for a quick kill. Both these warriors have reached level 4. They are absolutely convinced there is no way they can lose to a non-combatant blessed individual like her. Suddenly, a deafening crack rings through the courtyard, freezing everyone in their tracks as a warning shot echoes off the stone walls. It is the Citadel Guard. One of the knights demands to know who started this chaos, and the 3 fighters immediately throw their hands up, no hesitation there. The unit representative orders everyone to stand down, but Alaric just sneers, questioning what will happen if they decide not to listen. The soldier makes it crystal clear. He will open fire. Alaric just laughs. The idea of a soldier shooting at civilians is hilarious to him. But the soldier is not joking. This is an exception. Any identified threat, eliminated, period. Alaric eyes the man, wondering if he is the real leader, and realizing there might be more blessed knights hiding in the ranks. Coldly, Alaric warns that if they are threatened, they will have to hit back twice as hard. At this moment, Alaric is still testing the waters. Will these survivors actually dare to confront armed soldiers? He knows the blessed are strong, but not yet strong enough to ignore a volley of fire-ruined bolts as he stalks toward the line of steel. Alaric dares them to go ahead and shoot, mocking the lack of courage among these 20-year-old recruits. The soldiers think the boy is insane. One turns to Commander 𝑭𝒑𝒐𝒄𝒂𝒍𝒚𝒑𝒔, waiting for him to make a final decision. Cedric's mind is made up. He pulls the trigger to do his duty, but as everyone holds their breath in shock, nothing. The bolt does not fire. Alaric is actually surprised. He did not think Cedric would actually pull the trigger, and he takes back that comment about them being children. Cedric is reeling. None of this makes sense. His weapon was functioning perfectly just seconds ago. With a smirk, Alaric explains the weapon is not broken. Cedric will understand once he learns about the arsonist gift. See, Alaric's profession is arsonist, and his power allows him to interfere with any fire-related phenomena nearby. Cedric is stunned. Then, his subordinate reports the truth. All the other soldiers' fire-ruined weapons are malfunctioning too. Alaric spells it out. He disrupts fire, and since their rifles rely on combustion, they are basically useless. Surrounded by soldiers, Cedric realizes this group did not just stumble into this. This whole confrontation was a planned trap. The 2 troublemakers start showering Alaric with praise, calling their older brother a genius. But 𝑭𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒆 knows the truth. If this continues, the entire unit will fall into chaos. Having disarmed the knights, Alaric barks at the entire squad to get on their knees. But the soldiers whisper among themselves. If fire interference is his only trick, they have no reason to be afraid. Cedric suggests a new plan. 4 knights per troublemaker, using their numerical advantage to overwhelm them. The leader agrees, but sends extra support to 𝑭𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒆's side, while Alaric scoffs that numbers do not mean a thing against a blessed. Cedric ignores the trash talk and orders Knights Hain and Duin to take control of the situation. Alaric grows serious. He threatens to kill a few soldiers just to set an example, starting with the most confident ones. But before he can even finish his sentence, a fist flies at him like a lightning bolt. Boom, a direct hit to the face. Alaric realizes too late that he has been outsmarted. There is a blessed knight among the ranks. With the gang leader on the ground, everyone is floored. Even 𝑭𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒆 did not expect a blessed soldier to be among the troops. As Alaric lies unconscious from a single punch, the soldier mocks him, calling him weak. The second troublemaker cannot even process it. What made Alaric think he could act like the king of the world? Cedric admits with a touch of surprise that the unit is becoming truly formidable. With the situation under control, the unharmed are sent back to the barracks, while the rebels are thrown into restraints. Just then, Sir Alistair rushes in. Cedric reports that nothing serious happened regarding the conflict among the survivors. He explains there were 5 other blessed besides Lady 𝑭𝒂𝒎𝒊𝒏𝒆, and they tried to seize the fortress by force. But honestly, they were not a significant threat. Alistair spots the blonde rebel and realizes it happened exactly like the hero predicted. These 4 made their move. without realizing they were walking straight into a death trap. Cedric notes that the fifth rebel is still missing, but at that exact moment, Alistair trudges back into camp, carrying the brute on his back. He's dragged the man for miles, and he's completely exhausted. He's stunned to find the chaos already settled. He dumps the troublemaker, Cedric, onto the ground while Lord Sterling nods in approval. Our hero tries to act like it was nothing. But the knights, they're raving about Alistair's fighting skills that are reaching scary new heights. The survivors are paralyzed with shock. The man groveling in the mud is Cedric, the strongest warrior they had. Sterling realizes everything has changed. Did he go too far? Maybe. Alistair insists he was gentle, but his butcher's eye ability is anything but. It's built for one thing. That skill is dark. It starts by severing the windpipe and draining the blood, leaving him with an uncontrollable thirst for more. Luckily, he swapped to the scale stripper technique. It's normally for preparing fish, but it allowed him to subdue the boy without a funeral. From now on, Alistair can neutralize threats without adding to the body count. With the immediate crisis over, the group gathers to talk. Sterling looks at the captured thugs and scoffs. Is that it? Based on their performance, these amateurs barely reach rank 3. The garrison already has 6 newly awakened knights at rank 6. Sterling notes that Alistair has already cleared rank 10. Then there are the mystical crests. Every member is holding onto theirs tightly. The gap between them and the enemy is widening fast. Plus, the enchanted weapons provide a massive boost. A rank 1 recruit hits like a rank 5 instantly, even if it's temporary. Alistair offers his thanks for their hard work, but Sterling won't take the credit, insisting they only made it this far because of him. The conversation shifts when Lady Alara interrupts. She brings up the castle guards, who have also started manifesting their own unique powers. Alistair is just relieved to see she's doing well. Alara explains her safety is entirely thanks to the soldiers watching over everyone. Without the guards' protection, Alara admits they'd all be lost. Alistair feels the weight lift, thankful for his loyal men. He apologizes for keeping the truth a secret. Caution was necessary. Alara just nods. She understands completely and has no problem with it. But then Alistair drops the real bombshell. Half of the entire unit has already been awakened. He figures it's better to reveal it now. It's time for the full truth. He reveals his true calling to the group. He isn't just a knight, he's a high culiner, a chef. He handles the kitchens, but he handles the messy work too. The next morning, Alistair heads down to the basement cells. He asks the sentry if there's been any trouble. The soldier shakes his head. They thought the prisoners would escape, but they haven't tried. Where is he? Alistair asks. The sentry points down a dark corridor to the heavy door at the very end. That's the room. Where do we start? Alistair wonders. The guard looks at him, worried. Is he really going in alone? But our hero just smiles. He steps into Cedric's cell. The boy is shaking like a leaf. Alistair keeps his voice low and calm, promising he's only there to talk. Without wasting a second, he tells Cedric he has questions. Are you going to listen? He asks. The intimidation in the room is heavy. Cedric collapses to his knees, sobbing and begging for his life. Alistair is actually stunned. Did that one punch really cause such trauma? Listen, Alistair says. Cooperate and the beatings stop. But first, he pulls out a bowl of enchanted gelato. Eat this, he commands. After the session, Alistair is grinning. The gelato of truth worked perfectly. It makes the victim brutally honest, and Cedric started singing. He spills everything. Turns out, he and his little gang were nothing but common criminals before the world turned upside down. As news of the awakened spread, they realized they couldn't expand alone. So they bent the knee to a mysterious blonde leader. They joined Lady Alara's group in secret, hiding their powers. Taking over wasn't easy, but they were patient and very cruel. They had a specialist dedicated to tarnishing reputations and ruining lives from the inside. These weren't just thugs, they were calculated vipers. They targeted the Iron Vanguard because it was the ultimate prize. The weapons and the castle would have secured their power forever. Now it all makes sense. Sterling was right about hiding their strength. If the criminals had known the unit's potential, they'd be more careful. They would have moved slowly and picked the knights off one by one. Alistair looks at the survivors and wonders what comes next. Later that day, Knight Commander Thorn reports in. He's calmed the survivors just like he was told. He's smooth, efficient, and persuasive. Alistair is impressed. Having a man like Thorn under his command is a massive win. He asks the commander how it went. Thorn confirms it went well, but then his composure slips. He nervously asks for a few snacks as a reward for his loyalty. This is the part that worries Alistair. Thorn's withdrawal symptoms are getting worse. He's becoming entirely dependent on the hero's special cooking. When Alistair doesn't answer immediately, Thorn starts panicking. He apologizes and says 3 meals a day is enough, looking absolutely desperate. But Alistair relents. He agrees to whip up a snack to reward the man's hard work. Thorn's eyes light up with pure gratitude. He tells the commander to wait in the dining hall, and Thorn literally skips away like a happy child. It's a disturbing sight. Seeing this gives Alistair a dark idea. Maybe he should put the other 5 criminals under the same dependency. They're dead weight otherwise. If he leaves them alone, they're useless. But if they're hooked, they're loyal. Still, Alistair isn't a fan of playing God. As he starts cooking, the weight of the future hits him. He needs to take action, and he needs to do it soon. Moments later, Alistair stands before the golden-haired rogue with a tray of exquisite food. One bite, and that cold, jagged scowl melts away. Boom, a smile. Our hero does the same for the whole lot of them, unlocking the Warden of Redemption achievement. It is a rare feat granted when the power of the hearth subdues a band of outlaws. Additionally, the protagonist earns the prestigious title of Sovereign Chef, which boosts the nutritional effectiveness of monster meat by 30%. These former bandits are now the newest recruits of the castle garrison. By sunrise, they are saluting the knights and scrubbing the barracks alongside the other men. Quentin reports they are adjusting fast, even the older ones. Everything seems fine, so Alistair decrees they will remain under watch until their penance is complete. But then bam, Hugh rushes in looking absolutely frantic. He has got to speak with Alistair immediately. The master-at-arms shows him the grim reality. They have scavenged every drop of oil, but without more, the castle hearths will go dark in a week. Food is vanishing too. Alistair knew this was coming. The flood of refugees broke all their initial plans. A soldier asks for orders. Alistair's answer: "Pack up. We are leaving the fortress." That night, Kenneth finally realizes why Alistair told them to skip their evening meal. A feast is laid out, beautiful, steaming platters for every taste. But as they swallow the first bite, Alistair drops the bomb. It is actually drake meat. Instant chaos. The knights go from hungry to horrified in a second. Hugh is fuming, demanding to know why they are being fed filth. Alistair stays calm. He explains they have only faced low-level drakes so far. But according to Lady Alina's intel, there are far worse horrors out there: undead legions and shadow beasts. They have to be ready for anything. Hugh is still skeptical, though. He does not see why they have to eat the very monsters they kill. Here is the cold truth: the larders are empty. Aside from a few stale hardtacks, there is nothing. They could buy enchanted bread from the guild, but it is expensive and barely keeps a man standing. Monster meat, however, it is packed with raw mana. Alistair argues it is their only shot at staying strong enough to survive the coming winter. Kenneth gets it, but warns that most will hate this. These beasts killed their brothers-in-arms, after all. Alistair nods. He has been carefully tailoring these meals. Without this effort, the whole unit would have succumbed to the horror of it all. Eating the things that eat humans is a tough pill to swallow. But there is no time for doubt. Alistair is firm. Survival is the only goal that matters now. It is a simple choice. Either we eat the monsters or they eat us. With ice in his eyes, he asks his men for one thing: their trust. The next day, Hugh gathers the men for the special feast. At first, they are just happy to see fresh meat. Once the truth comes out, they hesitate, but then they taste it. Absolute perfection. It is better than any royal banquet, and it actually boosts their physical stats. It is a power-up on a plate, incomparable to their old rations. Kenneth beams. The plan is working. Sure, a few knights are still squeamish, but Hugh tells Alistair not to worry. Hunger is a great teacher. To lighten the mood, Hugh roars for a real party. He brings out his secret stash of ale and fine mead he had hidden away from the quartermaster. The courtyard erupts in laughter, and the celebration begins. For the first time in ages, Alistair sees them actually happy. Suddenly, Lady Alina appears from the shadows. She heard the commotion and came to investigate. Alistair tries to explain, worried she will think they are hoarding. But Alina already knows about the drake meat. She gets it. Survival requires desperate measures. But she is not here to complain. She has a request. She wants the survivors to be officially drafted into the knightly order. Alistair is stunned. Why would commoners want to step into the fray? Alina's answer is simple. Being protected is fine, but they need to learn to hold a sword for the dark days ahead. Alistair cannot help but feel a surge of pride. She is finally thinking like a true commander. The men are skeptical, eating the flesh of a beast. It sounds insane. But then they take that first bite, and everything changes. It's incredible. The taste is divine, but the feeling, pure power. Their very essence starts to level up. This beats any stale bread they've ever had. Kay is grinning from ear to ear. The plan is a total success. Silas nods, but he can see a few guards still hesitating in the shadows. The healer leans in. Don't worry, Silas. Once they see the others getting stronger, they'll be begging for a plate. Survival is a hell of a motivator. Time to celebrate. Hugo jumps on a table, shouting that this party is just getting started. He calls for the special stash he's been hiding. Out comes the hidden ale and fine wine. Turns out, Hugo's been skimming from the officers' meetings for weeks. The garrison absolutely loses it. Laughter echoes through the halls as the crates are pried open. For the first time in forever, Silas smiles. It's good to see them happy again. The mood is perfect, but then a shadow. Lady Alara appears in the doorway, catching Silas completely off guard. Talk about a buzzkill. She noticed the barracks were empty and followed the sound of the chaos. She looks confused, looking at the knights and the feast. Silas stammers out an explanation. He didn't want to force this lifestyle on the townspeople. It's not exactly a normal dinner, after all. The last thing they need is a riot, because the villagers think the knights are hoarding the good food while they suffer in the dark. But Alara isn't stupid. She's heard the rumors about the beast meat. It sounds revolting, sure, but she knows it's a necessary evil for survival. She gets it. Desperate times, desperate measures. But she's not here to judge. She has a favor to ask, and it's a big one. She wants the villagers to join the garrison. Formally, Silas is stunned. Why would peaceful civilians want to step into this bloodbath? Alara's gaze is steady. Being protected is fine for now, but they need to learn to fight. They need to be able to protect their own families. Silas feels a swell of pride. She's finally thinking like a true ruler. But elsewhere, things are taking a dark, dark turn. Arthur admitted the request was sudden, but Lady Alara countered quickly. They'd been planning this move ever since Lord Cedric's vile betrayal. It made perfect sense to our hero. Without the knight's protection, the commoners would have been slaughtered where they stood. Arthur asked if the other villagers were actually on board, and she didn't hesitate. A confident yes was all he needed to hear. But here's the catch. These are trained men-at-arms, so joining the unit means following the military chain of command without question. Alara didn't mind one bit, noting that Commander Alistair seemed more than capable of leading their ragtag group. Little did she know, Alistair was only playing the part because he was secretly taking every single order from Arthur himself. Our boy decided to explain that little secret later, promising Alara he'd clear the request with the high command soon. Alara beamed and thanked him, swearing that her people would work twice as hard just to keep pace with the vanguard. When Arthur broke the news to the rest of the squad, the reactions were mixed, to say the least, total disbelief. Some wondered if protecting a bunch of villagers wouldn't just be a death sentence, while the unit was already struggling. But look, They couldn't just dump these people in the woods to die the second the knights rode away, right? Sir Thorn questioned if everyone had truly agreed to this madness, and Arthur confirmed it. They were ready for war. Sure, the risks were massive, and no one knew what kind of nightmares were waiting for them in the dark ahead. But to survive, they had to fight as one. It wasn't just a choice anymore, it was their duty as humans and soldiers. Debate over. Later that evening, the girl pulled Arthur aside to show him the gear she'd been preparing in secret. He was floored. Alara had single-handedly tailored enough high-grade military surcoats for the entire unit. She was dead serious. These weren't just clothes. They were crafted from drake leather, with the finest hides reserved for the commanding officers. Since those scaled drakes had natural iron-like defense, she used that toughness to turn the hides into actual armor. The scales were a bit bulky, so she only reinforced the vitals. Smart move. Then asked Arthur to give one a test run. The moment he slid it on, the system pinged. This wasn't just novice work, the magical buffs were absolutely insane. We're talking a massive boost to physical defense and a serious resistance to elemental magic across the board. Arthur was stunned. When you stack this with the temporary stat boosts from their meals, he felt nearly invincible. Alara couldn't stop praising how heroic he looked, and he thanked her, genuinely surprised by how comfortable the fit was. Curiously, he asked why she chose a muted slate gray, and she explained it was for blending into the stone cities. She'd even designed different tiers, ensuring the officers had that extra layer of drake hide protection for the front lines. That's when Arthur had to drop the bombshell. He was the one actually running this entire military operation. Alara was completely baffled, so our protagonist decided it was finally time to let her in on the big secret. If she was joining the inner circle, she needed to know everything, but Arthur warned her. This stays between them. Only the veterans knew the truth about his power, and he needed her word that she wouldn't breathe a single syllable. Outside the barracks, the soldiers gathered to inspect their new gear, and wow, the hype was real. Everyone was losing it. Having leather that could turn a blade made the upcoming battles seem a lot less like a suicide mission. For the heavy hitters who needed more bulk, she'd left enough room for them to wear steel chainmail underneath. For the crossbowmen, she added specialized pouches for extra bolts, and for our hero, a perfect custom scabbard. She'd even set aside elite sets for Alistair and Thorn, which Arthur personally volunteered to deliver himself. Switching topics, he suggested that Alara make a uniform for herself too, since she was basically the voice of the people. She hesitated, wondering if her title as the survivors' representative even mattered now that they were joining the unit. Arthur's answer, not officially no, but he followed it up with a reveal that changed the entire game. Once they moved out, they were bound to find more refugees, and they'd need someone they could actually trust to lead them. The realization hit her. She wasn't just a civilian anymore. She was being entrusted with a massive leadership position. Blushing like crazy, another comrade chimed in, saying she was excellent and would definitely crush the new role. Arthur gave her a reassuring nod. He'd seen her grow and knew she'd adapt to the position in no time. He admitted he felt just as overwhelmed when he was first named leader, but humans were surprisingly good at adapting. To seal the deal, he handed her a master-crafted flintlock pistol, the kind usually reserved for elite royal inspectors. The Vanguard had lost its original battalion commander and the royal healer in the last attack, leaving these weapons unclaimed. Alara had never even held a firearm before, so our hero stepped in to give her a crash course in survival. Arthur then asked who would carry the other two flintlock pistols. Sir Cedric explained one was for the lieutenant, partly for the dignity of his noble rank, and partly because he was useless in a real fight. Then, the High Commander himself planned to wield the remaining one. Arthur explained he had been using a blade, but it had its limits. Since he was a strategist and not a frontline brawler, he decided to switch to a pistol instead. Cedric wasn't thrilled, but Arthur shut it down, saying a small-caliber weapon like that wouldn't do much against those monsters anyway. A few days later, another knight awakened, bringing the total to 100, finally enough to form a proper order. The divine system chimed in. An order is a structured society, so they needed to establish rules and a hierarchy. This was the perfect moment for Arthur to suggest the unthinkable, leaving the citadel. When he made the call to abandon the fortress and move out, the panic was real. Soldiers started arguing immediately. "It is suicide," they shouted. "How could ordinary people survive in the monster-infested wilderness?" No one flat out refused, but you could see them trembling. The anxiety in the air was thick enough to cut with a blade. But look, staying locked in these walls would eventually drive everyone mad. To survive, they had to move. Some, like the veteran knights, saw the logic and asked for the plan. Our heroes answer: one last feast to build some courage. With every survivor gathered, Arthur looked out at the crowd. It was a massive group, but it felt right. Thanks to him, they were finally united, and he told them it was time for the next step. There was still a lot to sort out. The system told them the leader could appoint deputies to handle the heavy lifting. These deputies would manage the administration, and could even send magical messages remotely. But wait, they still did not have a name. The system prompted Arthur to choose one for their new legacy. No surprise here, the royal vanguard was the first to form an official order. Gathering 100 awakened souls is no joke. Their reward, the legendary dragon's fang. For now, Arthur focused on naming the group and picking his inner circle. Grabbing a magical megaphone, Arthur announced the news. They had reached 100 awakened members. They were the first in the entire kingdom, and he congratulated everyone for the milestone. He promised them that, as they grew stronger, they would march forward with nothing but confidence. But before they left the citadel, things needed to be organized. 5 deputy positions were now open. Being a deputy meant a massive buff to their emblem skills, and Arthur made it clear he would pick them once they were outside. Moving as one giant mob would be a nightmare, so they needed sub-commanders to keep things tight. We are talking about lives on the line here, so these appointments had to be perfect. As the Grandmaster, Arthur could have just picked whoever he wanted, but he actually cared about their opinions. Luckily, after some back and forth, the unit was mostly on the same page. The senior knights he had in mind were essential. But then came the big issue: Julian, who was confined to a wheelchair. People started whispering. Julian was a great man and a brilliant surgeon, but the man could barely walk. Was he the best choice? Arthur heard them loud and clear. He announced that Master Julian would not be leaving the base at all. The knights were upset. They had just been told everyone was moving out. Even the senior officers were baffled. But Arthur explained the strategy. These mountains were their only stronghold. If everyone left, they would lose their territorial edge. The oracle had been clear. As long as they held the land, they would earn occupation points. The longer they held the fort, the more points they would rake in. They did not know what the points were for yet, but it was obvious. This world was all about territorial warfare. Julian then took the megaphone. He reminded everyone that his true trade was as an astronomer. The clearer the stars, the stronger his skills, and nowhere offered a better view than this mountain peak. He would stay behind as the unit's magical radar, collecting and relaying intel from above. 7 other brave soldiers volunteered to stay with him, forming the Crest Watch. With Julian's speech, the objections vanished. The command structure was set, and 5 deputies were officially chosen. Finally, it was time for the name. The soldiers suggested names like the Valorian Front, but they were not staying in one province. Someone tossed out Knights of the Round Table, but others thought Steel Unit sounded tougher. After all, that Iron Drake was the first monster they ever took down together. But in the end, one name hit different. From that day on, they were known as the Steel Legion. Sir Henry asked where the battalion should march. The options, east or west, but he made it clear the western lands were something else entirely. Massive cities like Canterbury lay that way, promising vast territory. Plus, that entire region was dotted with strategic fortresses and military outposts. On the flip side, The Eastmark region held the elite high guard and sat right against the coastline. Now, here's the real dilemma. Do they grab more land or link up with the kingdom's finest warriors? It was an impossible call to make on the fly. Alastair suggested they let Prince Arthur decide the path. Fast forward a few days. Dusk fell as the entire company gathered for the march. Alastair stood tall among the knights and their countless men-at-arms. Just 24 hours earlier, the High Command had been locked in a heated debate. The lords were worried. The Great Peaks weren't fully cleared yet, to make sure this mission didn't turn into a bloodbath. They laid out a detailed war map. Commander Thorne told everyone they'd better memorize every inch of that terrain before they stepped foot outside. But then Julian pointed at some red X marks. What were they? The company physician dropped the grim news. Those were fresh sightings of beastly abominations. Julian's jaw hit the floor. There were way more than anyone expected. They were fighting monsters every single day, yet the swarm just kept growing. It was overwhelming. Honestly, a total nightmare. This departure was becoming a massive headache. Instead of clearing out, the monsters were actually multiplying. And get this. The new reports mentioned freaky, mutated creatures, not just the usual drakes, without knowing how to kill them. Taking them down without heavy siege engines seemed suicidal. Captain Barrett turned to Lady Alina, asking how she even made it to the fort. Did she run into trouble on the road? Alina admitted there were beasts out there, sure, but nothing like the swarms they were seeing now. Her trip was quiet compared to this madness. She only crossed paths with a couple of strays, and none of them were those armored drakes. Since Alina handled them solo, Cedric figured the beasts wouldn't be much of a threat to a whole army. Oh, how wrong he was. Alastair spoke up. He called it the Lord effect. Everyone leaned in. They were dying to know what that meant. Think back. 2 days after they slayed the Beast Lord, survivors started appearing. They de-slipped through the mountains when the drake count was at its lowest. The area was unusually empty back then, but Silas pointed out the brutal truth. Things are way worse now. They had more soldiers and heavy supply wagons to protect this time. Moving this many people, it required a perfect plan, no mistakes. Alastair nodded. Every detail had to be nailed down. Finally, the gates creaked open and the column of steel and wood rolled out. Once they reached the valley floor, Commander Thorne barked out orders. Shields up, secure the perimeter now. Another captain ushered the survivor wagons into the center of the formation. The rearguard locked shields, bracing for the worst. The plan was in motion. Alastair watched the lines. Keeping formation on these broken roads was tough, but these men were veterans. It was a textbook strategy, heavies at the front, with the mages and archers providing support from the core. Classic. Heavy wagons acted as moving barricades at both ends, with knights guarding the wheels. Inside that shell, the long-range specialists. The awakened mages kept a tight watch over the survivors. But here, the problem, they had zero clue where the strike would come from. The path was narrow and the cliffs were steep. No room to run. Alastair's plan was simple, hit back fast and hard. But Garrick wasn't convinced. He argued they needed to floor it and get out of those mountains as fast as humanly possible. Alastair got it. These roads were a mess, dirt paths, jagged rocks, and sheer drops into nothingness. One wrong move, game over. Traveling here was suicide even on a good day. Speed was their best friend, but there was a catch. Going too fast could break the formation and leave them all for dead. With everyone in position, a soldier called out, "Orders, sir." "Move out." Minutes later, the iron-rimmed wheels were grinding over the stone as the scouts scanned the shadows. The civilians were tucked away in the safest spot, while the commanders huddled over their maps, eyes darting everywhere. A scout whispered about how quiet it was. Too quiet. Thorne snapped back. That silence wasn't going to last. There was a strange territory magic lingering in the air, but then, _SCRITCH. A chilling sound echoed through the canyon. The scout's voice trembled. "Sir, did you hear that?" Thorne nodded grimly. "Run, tell the main unit we've got company." Then the drakes came. Swarms of them, pouring over the ridges and surrounding the wagons in a sea of claws and scales. The civilians were shielded, so Alistair let out a roar. "Form up, just like we did in the yard, now." He screamed for the men to aim for the gaps in the armor. "Don't waste your energy, and keep the crossbows silent, don't draw more of them." The awakened knights snapped into action instantly. Every sub-commander was itching to show off what they could really do. Alistair wasn't about to play it safe either. He dove straight into the fray. Then, the monsters lunged all at once. They slammed into the shield wall with bone-shattering force. The men groaned, digging their heels in, refusing to let the line break. Through the blood and dust, a massive roar shook the earth. Thorn didn't flinch. He just buried a gauntleted fist into a drake's skull and kept moving. Declaring that only an alpha-class beast was worth his blade, Lord Quentin absolutely obliterated the monster with his bare fists, tossing it aside like trash. But he missed one thing. The monsters were literally using the corpses as ramps to reach the carriages. Cedric wasn't just standing around, though. He unleashed a surge of lightning to save a comrade, roaring for the men to stop hiding behind shields. "Push them back," he barked. "Make it impossible for those things to climb." One enchanted guard held a shimmering ward, while his brother-in-arms fought desperately to keep the fiends away from the terrified refugees. Even surrounded, the knights held the line. Absolute chaos outside, but inside those armored carriages, the civilians could only hear the horrific sounds of war. Shaking with terror, Lady Alara gripped her staff, remembering her duty to assist. She whispered words of comfort, promising that the king's men would never fall. Outside, the storm broke. Cedric cloaked a lightning strike in shadows, vaporizing every beast in his way. He grabbed a dead drake and hurled it onto the others, trying to scale the wagons, but victory was fleeting. A new shadow stretched across the horizon. Another horde was coming. And this group, absolute units, twice the size of the first wave, charging from every single direction at once. Sir Hugo gasped, "Where are they all coming from?" Cedric's answer was grim. "Once the blood starts flowing, the noise just draws more. If they'd used their crossbows earlier, they would have been swallowed by a literal tsunami of drakes by now." Since the next wave was still a ways off, Cedric ordered the men to finish off the stragglers. "Fast, we need to move. We have to get out of here." The rear report was clear. Every drake at the back was dead, leaving only 2 near the civilian wagons. Standing atop the lead carriage, Cedric shouted for the soldiers to eat their enchanted rations. Now. Another swarm was closing in. On command, the soldiers reached into their tunics for the alchemical snacks Cedric had prepared. "Thank the gods," one soldier breathed, feeling his exhaustion vanish. Cedric gestured for Sir Hugo to join him and eat up. They needed their strength before swapping places with Lord Conrad. As they ate, a surge of power hit. The system alert flashed. Every stat jumped by 5 points, with a massive boost to their stamina. With a grim smile, Cedric drew his specialized blade and asked if they were ready to bleed. As they prepped, Cedric realized something. He wouldn't be able to use this kitchen anymore. Once they were out in the wild, a proper hearth would be a luxury he couldn't afford. Cooking out there, it was suicide. The smoke and scent would be a beacon for every monster for miles. Plus, equipment was scarce. Until they reached the fortress at the mountain's base, it was rough living. No choice but to survive on field rations, but the current supplies, they wouldn't last a week for all these survivors. Thank heavens for Cedric's level 10 skill. Alchemical rations. Sure, the buffs weren't as strong as a hot meal, but the shelf life. Incredible, perfect for a forced march. High calorie and portable. In their mobile situation, dehydrated meat was the golden standard. And hey, there's no shortage of drakes, so Cedric figured he could eventually turn them into proper rations. Efficiency at its finest. Back in the chaos, orders were barked out to regroup and swap out the wounded soldiers. They even piled up a wall of drake corpses around the wagons for extra cover. Cedric wasted no time, shouting for the squad leaders to report their losses. He then dashed off, telling Conrad he'd be back in a flash. The stamina from the salted meat was a start, but it wouldn't be enough for what was coming next. With that in mind, Cedric found Commander Alistair and caught the officer off guard. "No time for talk," he said. "Use your sovereign skill." Alistair knew he was right, but his hands were shaking. He admitted he was still a bit nervous. The pressure was crushing. But a leader leads. He took a breath and unleashed his power, roaring, "Steel your hearts to battle." Boom! A massive command aura erupted, resonating through every single soldier in the area. This was the real deal. The battle-ready effect took hold. In formation, their power surged. They became an unstoppable machine, immune to fear and confusion. Total mental clarity. This boost from the commander scaled their power to new heights, stacking perfectly with the buffs from Cedric's meals. They felt like gods, but just then the Drakes finally reached the line. The invasion was on. Every sector of the caravan was under heavy assault. It was brutal and relentless, but the knights held. They believed they could make it. Each man took on 2, maybe 3 beasts at once. But then one guard took a savage hit to the gut. Cedric saw it. He leaped from above, driving his blade deep into a drake's chest. He didn't stop. He became a whirlwind of steel, carving a path through every monster in his way. One beast tried to cleave him in 2, but Cedric danced around it, ending its life in a blink. The power was unreal. The buff was working. They might actually survive this. However, the person at the center of the aura, something was happening. Arthur's eyes went wide with respect when he saw Alara in action. She was a whirlwind, taking on 5 drakes at once without even breaking a sweat. Beside him, Cedric just grinned. He knew she was going to dominate. She'd clearly been losing her mind, stuck inside that cramped wagon, but now, it was time to end this. They needed to wrap this up fast, especially since those drake carcasses were going to be their dinner later. Total chaos erupted as the vanguard took some heavy hits. A few knights were seriously wounded in the fray, while Quentin jumped in to keep the beasts at bay. Everyone had a job to do. Silas was sent to scout the perimeter, while Hudson was tasked with checking the survivors and finding a path that wouldn't lead them into another ambush. The company had to move before the sun went down. Period. Everyone knew the stakes, and Arthur sheathed his blade for a second to breathe. 10 men were down, but honestly, it could have been way worse. Thanks to the magic in the commander's rations, their wounds were actually closing up. The men looked at Arthur with pure, genuine gratitude. One of the soldiers thanked him personally, but Arthur just shook his head. He knew he wasn't where he needed to be yet, not even close. His skills were still too basic. All he could make was cured jerky, the most primitive iron rations you could imagine. For a leader, that felt like a failure. But instead of pouting, he got fired up. He wanted to do better, and that sheer intensity actually caught one of the soldiers off guard. This guy was serious. Plus, there was a catch. The more men eating his rations, the stronger the healing effects became. With over 100 soldiers, the power was scaling up fast. They didn't have a second to waste. Arthur started barking orders, telling the men to clear out space in the wagons for the ones who couldn't walk. Once the chaos was somewhat contained, Arthur headed over to one of the wagons that had taken a real beating. The verdict was bad. The wagon was a total loss. Arthur sighed, acknowledging the setback, and immediately asked if the rest of the caravan was still holding together. The soldiers gave him the thumbs up. The other wagons were built tough and were still operational, thank God. Resilience was the only thing keeping them moving. Still, Arthur wasn't exactly celebrating. They'd barely started this journey and it was already turning into a disaster. It was frustrating, to say the least. A soldier reminded him that these weren't armored war chariots. They were just wood and iron. They could be smashed to pieces if they weren't careful. There was nothing left to do but scavenge what they could. They stripped the broken wagon for parts and left the husk behind in the dirt. That night was tense. Half the camp tried to get some sleep while the others stayed on high alert. The captains huddled around Arthur, staring at the map and trying to figure out a new plan. Dawn broke, and the long march toward the new territory continued. But then, a soldier came sprinting toward Arthur, screaming for him to come quickly. Arthur's heart sank. "Did you find something?" he asked. The soldier just nodded, looking pale. When they arrived, Hudson was already there, staring at a section of the iron barrier that had been absolutely shredded. Arthur couldn't believe his eyes. How? Was it those drakes they fought earlier? It looked like something had just smashed through it. Quentin figured it was just the monsters, but Arthur wasn't buying it. Something felt off. Then he spotted the tracks in the mud. This was no accident. It was clear as day. A wagon had gone over the edge. Arthur's stomach twisted as he realized these were the scouts he'd sent ahead. He immediately demanded his looking glass. He focused the lens, peering deep into the shadows of the ravine. And there it was, at the very bottom. It was the exact wagon Julian and Simon had taken for their scouting mission. There were signs of a massive collision everywhere. Arthur went cold as he told the others. The news hit the men like a physical blow. Their friends, their brothers in arms, this was where they'd died. The atmosphere turned heavy with grief. Arthur was spiraling, wondering how this could have happened. He blamed himself. The Lord Commander had made a fatal mistake letting that mission go forward. Even if they'd begged to go, Arthur felt he should have put his foot down. He should have said no. Back then, they weren't even ascended yet. They were just regular men. Against a monster attack, they never stood a chance. The realization was brutal. If they'd just stayed on the mountain, they'd be alive right now. But here's the weird part. There were no bodies, anywhere. Quentin tried to be the optimist, suggesting maybe they survived and crawled away to find help. But Arthur knew better. A fall from that height, it would have killed a blessed knight, let alone a normal man. He knew the truth, even if it hurt to say it. They were likely Drake food. Arthur felt a mountain of remorse, but logically, it was the only thing that made sense. Still, he couldn't shake this nasty feeling in his gut. Something felt very, very wrong, like something even worse was waiting for them in the dark. Regardless, they couldn't stay here. The company had to keep moving. Later, Yorick mentioned how strange it was that not a single trace of them remained. Arthur agreed. It made no sense, but they had bigger problems. Supplies were hitting rock bottom, and they needed more iron rations immediately. Kaelin pointed out the one silver lining. They had a massive pile of fresh drake meat from the last fight. Arthur realized he'd have to cook while they were on the move. The soldiers couldn't survive in enemy territory without that enchanted jerky. Minutes later, the nightmare started all over again. Another horde of monsters came screaming out of the woods from every single direction. Hudson was screaming at the men to hold their ground. "Don't you dare break rank," he yelled, knowing that once the line broke, they were all dead. But man, there were just so many of them. Alara and the captains were fighting like demons, but it was anyone's guess if they could actually hold the line. Meanwhile, Arthur was inside a moving wagon, racing against the clock. This was their 4th battle today. 4. He hadn't even been able to step outside to help, because he was so busy churning out those rations. All he could do was pray his men held out. Luckily, the soldiers managed to drive the beasts back, but it cost them. 5 more men were bleeding out, and one of them was in really bad shape. Things are looking grim. Our lead, Arthur, is watching his men fall one by one, and the weight of these mounting casualties is hitting him hard. Even with Sir Cedric's divine blessings and those enchanted rations Arthur whipped up, the soldiers are running on fumes. Worse, the noise of the struggle is like a dinner bell for every beast in the mountains. It is a bloodbath, and word on the street is not great. Some of the men are starting to whisper about why Arthur is not on the front lines, swinging a sword. Look, he gets it. But Arthur knows he is no master swordsman. His real power is in the lab, crafting the gear and supplies that actually keep these guys alive. Alistair tells him to ignore the haters, insisting that those combat rations are the only reason they have made it this far. He promises to shut down the rumors, but Arthur is not so sure. Reputation in a noble house, that is not something you just fix with a conversation. Suddenly, a scout's voice cuts through the tension, panic in his eyes as he points toward something bizarre blocking the mountain pass. They sprint toward a nearby cavern, but when they step inside, pure horror. Even these hardened veterans were not ready for what was waiting in the dark. 2 of their own soldiers, turned into rotting, mindless zombies, seeing them still wearing the kingdom's crest. That is a sight you do not forget. Gawain steps forward, his face turning pale as he checks the insignias on their tattered cloaks. It is Julian and Sila's, the two brave squires Sir Cedric sent out on a scouting mission, now nothing but walking corpses. Talk about a nightmare scenario. Before anyone can freeze up, Lady Alara snaps into action, barking orders to the unit. She commands the men to advance and secure the area, hoping to recover whatever is left of the supply wagons. But then Gawain looks through his spyglass and his heart stops. These are not just zombies, they are armed, and they are coming right for them. This is insane. Even after death, Julian and Silas are still clutching their repeating crossbows, aiming them with terrifying precision. Take cover, no time to think. The soldiers scramble as the first volley of bolts whistles through the air. It is chaos. The undead start laying down heavy fire, but thankfully, the knights manage to lock their heavy kite shields just in time. Clang, bolts thud into the wagons, and one catches Sir Benedict right in the chest. Arthur panics, screaming for a healer, thinking they have lost him. But wait, Benedict gasps, clutching his chest, and tells Arthur that the enchanted gambeson actually held up. It saved his life. Talk about a massive relief. The soldiers are stunned, asking Arthur to double-check their own gear after seeing that miracle. Arthur is genuinely impressed. Even under a hail of bolts from the undead, his craftsmanship is holding the line. No fatal wounds, yet. The zombies keep marching forward, but suddenly the firing stops. They are still coming, but the weapons are silent. The men realize pretty quickly, those things are out of bolts. Alara actually lets out a dark laugh, noting they are too brain-dead to know how to reload. Time to end this. She orders the elite knights to strike before the monsters can close the gap. Gawain leads the charge, and honestly, it is a total wipeout. Within seconds, the undead squires are finally laid to rest. The threat is gone, but Gawain is clearly messed up about it. Killing your former brothers-in-arms, that leaves a scar. Arthur and Alistair breathe a sigh of relief, thinking the worst is over. But the atmosphere, it is still incredibly heavy. Right on cue, a massive murder of ravens erupts from the trees, screaming as if the sky itself is falling. Bad omen, you bet. The mountain begins to groan. Everyone freezes as a deep, low vibration starts shaking the very ground beneath their boots. Alistair looks at Arthur, his voice trembling. Is it happening? Arthur nods. The noise from that fight, it just rang the dinner bell for the entire region. Every monster within 5 miles is headed their way. Alara asks for the plan, and there is 0 time for a committee meeting. Arthur drops the act. The stealth mission is over. He orders the mages and archers to break their seals and prepare for a total bloodbath. It is all or nothing now. If they do not use every ounce of magic and steel they have, nobody is making it off this mountain. He moves the long-range specialists onto the heavy wagons for a mobile defense, while the knights are tasked with clearing a path through the carnage. The goal is simple: reach the valley pass. If they can break out of these narrow ridges, they might actually live to see tomorrow. Everyone scrambles. This is the real deal. No more games, no more hiding, just pure survival. The wagon master says they need 30 minutes to clear the pass. Arthur shoves his best marksman into the lead carriage for extra protection. Defensive formations are set. Archers on the roofs, knights on the ground. Everyone is locked and loaded. Arthur takes a deep breath, bracing for the impact. He is determined to get his men home, but he knows this is going to be hell. And then they arrive. Not just the usual beasts, but creatures of all shapes and sizes, horrors they have never even seen before, closing in from the shadows. As the first wave slams into them, the knights engage. Arthur's voice echoes over the din. Keep the path ahead clear. It is a total meat grinder. Gawain charges into the fray like a man possessed, knocking beasts aside like they are made of straw. But they are getting bogged down. Gawain yells back that the wagons are losing speed and they need more support, fast. Up on the roofs, the archers are firing until their fingers bleed. One of them screams for more ammo as the supply runners struggle to keep up. That is when a support soldier looks up the ravine and sees it, a whole new tide of nightmares pouring down the cliffs. Things just went from bad to worse. Beastly wolves. They're lunging at the line, and the guards are absolutely terrified. One knight calls out for Arthur, "Look at these things. Way more dangerous than those drakes." Arthur is completely floored. 6 legs, moving like a blur, the front line is barely hanging on. They aren't just fighting, they're ravenous. These things are pure, wild predators, way more feral than the drakes. What's the move? Arthur's mind is racing. Navigating the heavy supply wagons through this, nearly impossible. But then, boom, inspiration strikes right at the front lines. The shield bearers are sweating blood, giving everything they've got to stop the advance. "We can't hold much longer," one warrior warns. Disaster is just seconds away. Suddenly, meat. Massive chunks of it are tossed right into the middle of the pack. The wolves pivot instantly, tearing into that drake meat. The soldiers are honestly stunned. Arthur's call, "Keep it coming, use the food as a total distraction." This was exactly what he expected. They swarmed the group like animals, not soldiers. Unlike the drakes, who were tactical, these wolves just follow their stomachs. While they're busy eating, Arthur starts hunting for a way to take them down. His gourmet's insight hits. The secret: they're wide open when they're distracted by food. Zero focus, total disarray. In this state, they're incredibly fragile. That drake meat was the ultimate bait, letting the marksmen pick them off one by one. Victory. Arthur realizes drake meat is basically a cheat code for deceiving other monsters. Using this tactic, the unit handles the next few crises like they're nothing. He even adds a special chef's glaze to the meat, making the distraction even more powerful. Turns out, the better the quality of the dish, the harder the monsters fall for it. Another wave hits. Arthur spots their weak legs and shouts out the orders to the knights. Simple as that. The battalion handles the whole situation with total ease once again. Finally, the path clears. The end of the mountain trail is finally in sight. Some are cheering, others are just relieved, but Arthur, he's struggling to stay upright. He pushed his abilities too far. Eyes burning, head spinning, he's completely drained of mana. And then, collapse. He hits the dirt, and the whole battalion falls into a total panic. Some time later, he wakes up in a cold sweat inside a derelict manor. Cedric is right there. Arthur feels like he's dying, but he has to know, where are we? They found this abandoned farm and fortified it, safe for now. Cedric offers him some ration pack porridge he whipped up. Arthur notices immediately, it's just boiled mush. Rowan literally just threw it in a pot. More monsters attacked while Arthur was out, but the unit held. "Did you keep the carcasses?" Arthur asks. Cedric nods. He knows those hides and meat are worth their weight in gold. Julian and the others are out retrieving them, while Alistair helps with production. A soldier enters, the scouts are back. "Rest," Cedric says, "I'll take it from here." No way. Arthur forces himself up. Now, Thomas had suggested heading west for opportunities. But Silas, he calls the west a literal death trap, a total hellscape. The chaos draws more beasts, and the humans they kill, they turn into zombies. Blackwood Village is crawling with the undead and monsters. It's a nightmare scenario. Stepping into a nest like that would put them at a massive disadvantage. Between the ruins and abandoned carriages, they'd be trapped and blind. "We don't move," Arthur decides. "Not until we've reinforced and healed the wounded." The 2 healers are barely hanging on. Any more injuries and people start dying. Silas asks what's the next move, and Arthur starts thinking. Heading back to the King's Reach garrison. Sir Alaric was all over that idea, knowing the fort would be packed with the vital supplies they desperately needed. Unlike the death traps of the ruined capital, the garrison sat in the open lowlands, a short, much safer trek for the whole company. They needed a proper stronghold to survive this nightmare, and this outpost was the perfect spot to finally plant their flag. Time was wasting. The heroes gathered the High Knights before sundown to hammer out a plan that wouldn't get them all killed. They weren't going to move as one big target. Instead, they split into 3 specialized squads, each led by a veteran captain. Since heavy crossbows were too loud and slow, the marksmen stayed at the cabin. They had to save every last enchanted bolt for when things got truly ugly. Lady Alara was named a squad leader, and even though she was shaking in her boots about leading knights, Alaric knew she was ready. This was her moment to shine. She was one of the few who had actually survived the fall of the great capital, and that experience, pure gold. Alaric knew her knowledge of the city's labyrinth was priceless, so he paired her with an awakened survivor in each group. These gifted ones were well-trained and loyal to a fault, as long as they were promised some sweet honey bread after the fighting was done. With the group set, Alaric could only hope that luck was on their side while they ventured into the unknown. Come dawn, Sir Alaric gave the order. Split up, take different mountain paths, and avoid any unnecessary attention until they reached the destination. Orders were followed to the letter. As Alaric signaled the departure, the remaining villagers whispered prayers for their safe return. After a long march, Alaric turned to Alara, curious. Why were most of the survivors always found huddling in the ruined cities? Alara's answer was grim. It was a choice between monsters or starvation. The capitals were the only places with leftover grain and salted meats. The ghouls and beasts were terrifying, sure, but the hollow ache of hunger was a much slower, crueler way to die. She looked at the garrison with relief, admitting that before joining Alaric, every single day had been a desperate struggle for one more breath. Alaric asked if the towering stone buildings made it harder to spot the enemy, remembering how those ruins felt like a cage. But Alara shook her head. Those buildings were their armor. They could vanish into the shadows and move through the walls whenever danger prowled nearby. That trick wouldn't work out here in the open fields. If something spotted you on the plains, you were as good as dead. It clicked for Alaric then. What he saw as a tactical nightmare was actually the only reason ordinary folk were still drawing breath. He wondered if more people were still hiding in the shadows of the capital, and Alara was certain of it. The king's army weren't the only ones left. This realization made Alaric uneasy. They needed to grow their forces and claim more resources, but at what cost? Just like their first group of recruits, they needed more blades and more bodies to stand a chance against the rising darkness. But here's the problem. If the military starts letting in just anyone, criminals and traitors could slide right in. Talk about a massive headache. Suddenly, Alara froze. She sensed something in the air and signaled the entire group to halt immediately. Alaric went silent, hand on his sword. She could hear it, the ragged, wet breathing of the undead hiding just out of sight. The scouts confirmed it, ghouls. Luckily, the monsters hadn't noticed them yet. Without Alara's sharp ears, they would have walked right into a slaughter. The unit was still flying blind, but Alara explained that while ghouls are weaker than great beasts, they still remember their human habits. Some even display a twisted kind of intelligence, like the ones that crawl through the old sewer tunnels to hunt. They hide in the dark, waiting to spring a trap on anyone foolish enough to get close. Alaric needed a way to spot them first. Alara told him that, with the heightened senses of an awakened, you can actually track their breathing if you focus hard enough. Hearing, that was the key. Alaric's mind started racing, trying to figure out how to turn that sound into a winning strategy. Minutes later, the hero gathered his knights for a quick brief, his voice low and serious as he laid out the plan. "Focus up," he commanded. "Grab your greatswords. We're going in heavy because a stealthy approach is off the table now." Only Alaric and a few elite knights would form the vanguard, while the rest of the unit stayed back to lock down the garrison's perimeter. Everything was set. Alaric gave the signal, and they moved like shadows, slipping into the dark maw of the garrison's main hall. Inside the cold stone walls, they split into two teams, but before they could even take 10 steps, they heard it breathing. From everywhere. The air was thick with the sound. There were too many of them to count, making it impossible to tell where the next attack would come from. Alara's face went pale. In all her years of surviving the capital's ruins, she had never seen a horde this massive in one place. And then the kicker, Alaric spotted familiar armor. His former high commanders were now among the rotting monsters. This mission was a suicide run. "Fall back," Alaric hissed. Even the battle-hardened Knights Captain agreed. They were completely outmatched and needed to move now. But just as he turned to lead the retreat, a ghoul came flying out of the darkness, claws aimed straight for the young officer's throat. It was a split second from ending his life, but Alaric was faster. A dagger suddenly appeared in his hand, buried deep in the monster's neck. "Run!" he roared. The silence was gone. A sea of undead was screaming behind them, and they couldn't afford to slow down for even a second. After all that chaos, the group finally makes it out of the base, but the truth is a total gut punch. That ghoul, it was actually one of their own. Sir Alistair, the standout knight from their battalion, is drawing all the stares. He explains the grim reality. He recognized the man behind the rot. Even twisted by the curse, identifying them is still possible, and it is heartbreaking. Lord Kenrick notes that despite the horror, these were their brothers in arms. Fighting your former superiors, that is the kind of emotional trauma that can break an army's spirit. Alistair sees the instability starting to creep in. Reflecting on the heavy mood, Alistair realizes it has been way too long since he has cooked a proper, soul-soothing feast for his squad. Ever since they ran into those rogue survivors on the road, the troops' fear of the withered has turned into a full-blown nightmare. In this case, Alistair mentions he thought about scouting elsewhere, but his gut says they still have to hit the Citadel barracks. It is a move driven by pure mental health management, which honestly confuses the hell out of everyone at first. Our hero explains that while the fighting is temporary, there might still be survivors worth saving. That is the real mission. Lady Alina agrees immediately, knowing a rescue would ignite their courage. Lord Kenrick, however, he still thinks the plan is absolutely mental. Alistair counters that unlike aimless scouting, a rescue mission gives them a real purpose, a reason to keep swinging. After a long, heated discussion, the officers finally agree to hear him out. The strategy session begins, time to take back the barracks. Since the fortress is basically a high-level dungeon now, Alistair knows this will not be a walk in the park. Sir Kwong suggests bringing in every court sorcerer to just level the entire place with maximum firepower. Overkill? Maybe. Unexpectedly, Alistair keeps that as plan B, but insists they eat first. While he is cooking, he starts calculating their odds. Their combat skills are solid, but a simple strength boost will not cut it against these things. He needs something sharper. He begins prepping leopard ear stew. Legend says these help you track predator and prey alike by sound alone. Plus, the meal is infused with calming enchantments and rare magical ingredients to crank the effects up to 11. A bit later, the soldiers dig in and, wow, they are floored by the taste. It is like the best roasted pork neck they have ever had. Suddenly, their stats jump by 5 points across the board, and that enhanced hearing magic finally kicks in. One soldier starts shouting about something weird in his status window, drawing everyone's attention. Another knight snaps at him for yelling, but then they realize, wait, nobody is actually raising their voice. Temporarily, the squad has gained superhuman hearing. Before a noise complaint argument breaks out, Alistair realizes it is time to move. Sprinting through the city, the soldiers can hear the ghouls, raspy breathing before they even see them. It is a total game changer. They intercept the monsters with brutal efficiency, leaving no room for a counterattack. It is pure, calculated chaos. One soldier hisses about a ghoul hiding in a wardrobe, while another tells him to pipe down. They are pinpointing enemies by sound alone. Lady Alina finds it almost unbelievable, though she notes that their ears are starting to throb with the intensity. Alistair suspects their brains are not quite ready for this kind of sensory overload yet. Still, for basic ghouls, it is more than enough. At this rate, they will be finished in no time. But then, boom, a ghoul appears out of thin air, completely silent. Luckily, Alistair is on it. He blocks the lunge and drives a blade straight through the monster's skull. It seems some of these things are learning to hunt silently. Alistair realizes they have overstayed their welcome. He orders the group to the officers' quarters on the next floor. If they play it smart, they will finish this without any casualties. Reaching the next level, Alistair is stunned to find Sir Hong already there, casually waiting. Hong smirks that Alistair is late, and Sir Kwong reports that most of the trash has been cleared out. One soldier even jokes that he feels bad for the ghouls since they have zero combat skills. But then, they see him. There is one left, the commander of the battalion, General Sterling, and he is turned. Alistair is visibly shaken. This was not some indecisive lieutenant, this was a soldier's soldier, a legend. Everyone in the unit respected his command. This is the hardest part. Alistair announces he will handle the farewell personally. Everyone nods. As the master of the Iron Legion Order, this is Alistair's responsibility, his burden to bear. Despite the hesitation in his heart, our hero draws his blade and begins the long walk toward his former mentor. The duel explodes into motion with the general striking first. Alistair feels it immediately. This spirit is on a whole different level. But Alistair is not the same man he was. He ends it in a single, devastating move. Surprising ease, yet heavy hearts. Even in this nightmare, he vows never to forget the warrior spirit the commanders showed them in life. After the final blow, he commits himself to building this order under the general's legacy, a new beginning. He promises to transform the Iron Legion into the most powerful force in the realm, protecting his people at all costs. The regiment holds a solemn burial for their fallen brothers, lighting a massive pyre to burn the ghoul corpses. Heavy hearts all around. Every soul we lost today was a legendary knight and a brother in arms. Lord Alaric bids a final farewell, wishing them eternal peace. With the fire fading, he tells the men to focus on those still breathing. No time to waste. They start turning the old officer's manor into a makeshift fortress immediately. Alaric's unit is on cleanup duty. Their mission is to purge every single trace of the undead from these walls. Sir Liam's group heads to the nearby brook to secure fresh water for the camp. Sir Quentin's men gather timber and prep torches before the sun disappears and shadows lengthen. Lord Alaric sits with Sir Cedric to map out a defensive wall. Keeping the line of sight clear for the wizards and archers is the top priority. They aren't waiting around. The construction starts right this second. Later, Lord Alaric mentions he'd love to throw a massive feast like the ones back at the capital, but it's just not possible yet. He sees the disappointment in their eyes and he gets it. Leisure is important, but the real grind starts now. They need a new destination. That's when Duke Humphrey taps Alaric on the shoulder, giving him the floor to take the lead. Humphrey reminds everyone that while the Order came here to expand the kingdom, they're currently just struggling to stay alive. He pulls out a scroll listing their needs. It's grim, we're short on everything. One soldier pipes up, "What about food? We've been butchering monster meat since we got here." True, but Alaric shuts it down. Meat alone won't keep a knight healthy. You need balance. He wonders about the mana in an awakened's body. Can magic really fix a lack of proper food? Sir Alistair thinks they could survive on beast meat for a month, but after that, who knows what happens to the body? Plus, they're running out of lamp oil and crossbow bolts, essential stuff for staying alive. Lord Alaric opens the floor. "Time for ideas, gents. How do we solve this?" That's when Corporal Gangu, the siege engineer, raises his hand with a bold plan. They need to hoard crafting materials. Sir Alistair is confused. Materials, why? But Gangu is dead serious. This is the way. Alaric flashes back to when he wanted to fix the old war wagons. He sees where this is going. Lord Alaric admits that if they'd had the supplies, they wouldn't have had to ditch all those transport carriages. Gangu is the expert engineer here, so Alaric tells him to break it down for the group. Gangu makes a solid case, even if oil and food seem like the bigger fires to put out. But if they can build safe ways to move, everything else becomes easier. The talk shifts to war machines, armored carriages reinforced to withstand monster swarms. Imagine wagons covered in iron spikes. Alaric loves it. If they're reinforced, they can stop playing defense and start moving fast. Can you actually build these armor sets? Alaric asks. The corporal says with enough time, absolutely. That's what siege engineers do. They turn a cart into a rolling fortress. If Alaric is right, the production skills in this world are way more powerful than he ever imagined. He gives Gangu a warning. If you're just trying to show off, I'll shut you down. Is this for real? Gangu stands his ground. It's the most important thing we can do right now, my lord. Enough, Alaric says. Do it, make it happen. Despite the other shortages, this is the new priority. The day ends, and Alaric tells everyone he'll finalize the plans later. Dismissed. Later, Alaric lights a campfire to cook. He's going to need help setting the tables for the men. The manor's dining hall is useless without magical power or running water, so the fire will have to do. He starts melting down monster fat. The smell, oh, it's absolutely foul. But this is mon-infused fat. When you cook with it, it adapts to the magic of the dish. In the culinary world, this is the ultimate cheat code. It makes anything fried taste like a 5-star meal. And there it is, the legendary alchemical cooking oil. At the next meeting, Gangu mentions a massive hardware storehouse near the old garrison. Duke Humphrey is stunned. How do you know about that? Gangu explains he raided it back when the base was desperate. So that's where we get our steel, Alaric asks. Gangu nods. That place has everything they need. This spot is right by the garrison, but tucked away from the city. Arthur's hoping that means fewer cursed ones. Harold loves the plan. Arthur agrees, thinking this is the perfect chance to strike. Our hero tells Alistair to get the men ready. Same squads, but with a royal sapper assigned to each. Gareth is told to bring a heavy war wagon to the front. Harold's worried about the risk of discovery. No other way, Arthur insists. They need those supplies, but he promises they'll be ghosts. Then chaos hits. Arthur shouts, "Report, how many men are down?" 3 wounded. Thankfully, nothing fatal. Arthur orders immediate healing while Alistair secures the perimeter. They're moving at full throttle now. Gareth is pushing the horses for everything they've got. The Order tried to keep things quiet, but you can't predict every disaster in this wasteland. The roads are a nightmare. Beasts are everywhere, literally tearing each other apart for scraps. But the cursed ones, they're smarter. They avoid the rot. The knights clear a path for the wagon. They arrive. This vault is massive. Seriously, it's gargantuan. Looks empty, though. Arthur wants in and out fast. He puts Lady Alina on guard at the gates. The sappers start pointing out what they need. The rest, time for some heavy lifting. Arthur gives the word, and they charge the entrance. But then they stop dead. The place is a total wreck. Everyone's stunned. Arthur just says, "Focus, grab the steel and get out." "Keep the exit clear," he barks. "Load the wagon first." They find the armor plating, but it's scattered everywhere. Moving this stuff is going to be a nightmare. Suddenly, a noise. A strange metallic scraping. Everyone freezes. Even the sappers hear it. Something's in there with them. Arthur draws his sword. "Ready yourselves, battle formation." Knights draw steel and rush the sound, but then the metal plates on the floor start moving. Dark energy begins swirling in the shadows. It's pulling the steel in, fusing it together. Realization hits. This isn't just a pile of junk. It's a massive metal beast that's been hiding in plain sight. The thing lets out a roar so loud it vibrates in their bones. This thing is ridiculously strong. Alistair's never seen anything like it. His veteran knights are actually shaking. But Arthur, he's seen worse. "Steady, men, hold your ground." That roar shatters the glass windows. Outside, Alina hears it and sprints toward the fight. She's wondering how big this thing can be. Then she sees it. It's a nightmare made of iron. One swing, just one, and 5 knights are tossed like ragdolls. Harold screams to use the bait. Alistair lunges in, but his blade just sparks off the beast's iron hide. No damage, none. It's a massacre. The beast is relentless, crushing through their line with brutal force. Even the buffs from Arthur's cooking aren't enough. This monster is on a completely different level. Ground-shaking impacts everywhere. Knights are being flung aside like they're nothing. "We're going to get wiped out," Arthur realizes. He grabs the beast bait. It worked before, right? He hurls it at the monster, and the thing just swats it away like trash. Arthur's in shock. Why didn't it work? Harold yells the only thing that matters. Retreat. Arthur calls the fallback. Slow and steady, don't let it catch your back. Wounded first, they scramble into the wagons. Arthur's fuming. He's going to make that thing pay for wasting his food. Luckily, the beast doesn't follow. It's tied to its territory, for now. But the damage is done. They need to get back to the castle and fast. Back at camp, the mood is grim. Forget the steel, someone says. It's not worth the lives. Alistair nods, then turns to Arthur. Did you see anything, a weakness? Yeah, Arthur replies. But taking this thing down, it's going to be a hell of a fight. The system revealed the truth. Its belly is soft, but it's shielded by those massive metal plates. To kill it, they have to force it to expose that core, and then strike with everything they've got. Look, the ores aren't vital, and we could easily find them elsewhere, but that's not the point here. Sir Arthur is fuming. This beast is supposed to be a predator, so why won't it touch the bait? Every living thing has to eat, period, but Arthur just can't figure out why it's being so picky. Then Sergeant Miller speaks up. Maybe it eats steel. The lords all turn to him, completely stunned. Miller points to the scraps. Look at the bite marks. The commanders can't believe their own eyes. You sure? Miller nods. As a smith, I know teeth marks from rust. Something definitely chewed this. Sir Alistair is skeptical. A monster that actually digests solid iron. It sounds completely and utterly insane. That's when Arthur gets a crazy idea. With leftover oil, he suggests frying the metal plates immediately. The group just stares. Frying armor. They doubt a bit of grease will make steel taste any better. But they can't win a fair fight. It's either try this weird plan or retreat in total shame. Miller shrugs. Better to try something than nothing. And just like that, the plan is finally decided. Arthur grabs a clean iron shield. He starts cooking it, channeling all his inner rage into the pan. He's seething, remembering what the beast did to his men as the oil sizzles against the cold metal. Suddenly, the divine record pings. The metal is now infused with arcane power and the chef's spite. It's said that even the most legendary chefs rarely dare to innovate like this, but not our hero Arthur, as he now receives a legendary pioneer's reward. Ingredient limit break. Arthur is pleasantly surprised. This is much bigger than he ever expected to find. Miller checks it. The iron didn't get stronger. Instead, it became brittle and almost useless as armor. It's total trash now. Lord Julian sighs, thinking the entire experiment was a massive waste of their time. But Duke Cedric disagrees. Transforming the very nature of steel with oil, that's an incredible, miraculous achievement. The group is torn, while Arthur remarks that maybe he should just stop experimenting with his cooking. Suddenly, a scout rushes in. Sir Arthur, we're ready. It is finally time to begin the operation. The mission starts. Most soldiers have no clue that Arthur's meals can literally alter a person's emotions. Better to keep that secret. He views the ruined metal as a massive debuff for the metal beast. Back at the armory, the plates start shifting. This time, the monster will definitely not be resisting. The iron lurker only forms a body when it senses prey. It's a terrifying sight for everyone. There it is, the core, a dark shadow hiding behind a fortress of stolen, reinforced iron pieces. No hesitation. Arthur chucks the crispy shield at the beast. Everything goes dead silent as it hits. The monster freezes. Then, it creates a gap and pulls the fried metal deep into its core. It worked. Arthur watches as the beast starts its meal, hoping it enjoys the special season treat. Outside, Lady Alara notes the eerie quiet. Inside, the beast is shedding its armor to enjoy dinner. Without its plates, it actually looks kind of cute, but Julian is confused by Arthur's calm demeanor. The dish's special effect is defeat, Arthur explains. Right now, that monster is feeling like a loser. It's trembling, overwhelmed by a sense of failure so strong it can't even move a single muscle. Julian wants to finish it, but Cedric interrupts. Wait, Look at this unique plate I found here. Arthur uses his chef's eye. The record shows the metal is now supercharged with powerful arcane energy. It's high-quality stuff, though the system warns him it's definitely not hygienic for any actual eating. Still, Arthur is impressed. The system actually recognizes this monster scrap as a valid cooking ingredient. Cedric realizes the magic has transformed ordinary iron into something far more valuable and very rare. Lord Julian knows why their swords bounced off now. The beast's magic makes the metal nearly indestructible. This could be a gold mine for the army. Cedric wants to keep the monster alive for harvesting. The group starts arguing, sparing a beast like this. That's a very dangerous game to play now. Arthur gets it, but leaving a monster unchecked is just asking for a disaster later on. It's peaceful now, sure, but for how long? Cedric is practically drooling over the potential profit. Arthur stares at the creature, weighing his options. Then, Miller speaks up with a new suggestion. Securing the beast in a fortified cellar to save those rare ores. Lord Cedric turns to Sir Arthur. Is this worth the risk? Arthur isn't about to let this gold mine go. Master Blacksmith Thorn is ecstatic. The soldiers don't waste a second. Within heartbeats, they've got the monster locked in a heavy cage. Arthur declares the Iron Devourer stays here. No metal nearby for him to eat. The beast is absolutely fuming. Meanwhile, the royal engineers dive into the new materials. The results, mind-blowing. These ores are tougher than anything in the kingdom. The engineers are losing their minds with excitement. Arthur's impressed. Truly. Thorn thanks them for the trust. Relieved his hard work is the priority now. Task 1, complete. Arthur gives the corporal the green light. Time to see what this master builder can really do. Suddenly, the system pings. Low-level cooking ingredients. Arthur's hyped. Everything in this world is starting to look like dinner. If the engineer's skill only finds metal, Arthur's divine insight goes way beyond that. It's limitless. He realizes if he pairs this with his chef's eye, the one that spots every weakness, no monster stands a chance. They'll be ready for anything. Fast forward a few days, the modifications are done. Thorn presents the final product. The commanders are floored, total silence. The results are just, wow, this isn't just a wagon anymore. It's got massive horns and spikes. One soldier jokes it looks like a nightmare from the wastelands. It's weird, sure, but the engineer promises it'll hold. Arthur doesn't care about looks, he just wants results. Thorn breaks it down. It's a combat fortress on wheels. Those side spikes, they'll turn monsters into mincemeat. Except for that steel beast they just fought, of course. Arthur nods, he knows the limits. Think of it as a rolling barricade. A tank. Plus, with the new soundproofing, they're basically ghosts on the road. Arthur is loving it. Then he checks on the Iron Devourer. Thorn says the beast is behaving, for now. They're monitoring his diet. Keep the metal away and he stays calm. But get this, the iron he eats. It's being reinforced with pure magic. Huge win for the guild. Every plate he consumes comes out stronger. It's a slow process, but it works. The plan, use this magical steel to eventually build an impenetrable wall. Arthur's a bit worried, but Lord Cedric thinks it's brilliant. Later, the scouts find an old merchant inn near the border. Sir Lucas wants to test the juggernaut, but Arthur stops him. They need real supplies first. Captain warns them they can't just sit around. They need to move. Lucas is the first to back him up. They aren't sure if there's even food left in that dusty old place, but it's close. Arthur agrees, it's worth the gamble. They gear up and roll out. Soon, they're standing before the inn. Everyone's buzzing about the juggernaut's performance. That first run, smooth as silk. Monsters were literally shredded to pieces. Only downside, the blood and guts everywhere. The corporal admits he didn't exactly plan for the cleanup. Stay sharp, Arthur warns. He hands out provision number 3. The soldiers toast to their commander. Assigning numbers to food based on their buffs. Genius. This dried venison actually sharpens their hearing. Now on high alert, the group slips into the store. They split up, eyes scanning the empty shelves. Nothing, just dust. Arthur decides to push deeper into the back rooms just to be sure. Suddenly, a shout. A soldier finds a shambler corpse, head caved in by a heavy axe. Someone's already been here. A survivor, then. A noise, everyone freezes. Arthur signals, "Don't move." He closes his eyes, listening to the shadows. There, in the butcher's quarters, a muffled scraping sound. Someone or something is hiding. Ambush, possibly. The unit moves in, weapons drawn, hearts pounding against their armor. Thorne doesn't wait. He slams into the gate with pure brute force, shattering the wood into splinters. Arthur is right behind him, chef's eye active. He doesn't care what kind of monster is waiting. He just needs one weakness, one opening. To him, every enemy is just a piece of meat ready to be sliced. A dish ready for the fire, but then, the system pings, not a monster, a human. A girl steps out from the shadows, trembling, clutching her little brother, just trying to survive. Flashback time. A group of refugees had found this place weeks ago. They had supplies, but too much to carry. They couldn't leave it all behind, but a woman warned them, staying here was a death sentence. Their packs were bursting, but they were greedy. One of them suggested a hiding spot. A group of scavengers is rushing to pack. The girl is panicked, begging them to leave the loot behind. It's not worth their lives. The men grumble but finally agree. They call out to Selene and her brother, ready to vanish into the night. But then, the air goes cold. Boom, something erupts from the shadows, tearing through the room like a whirlwind of blades. Men are tossed aside like rag dolls, blood spraying everywhere. The leader screams for Selene to run. He's pointing at a nightmare, a creature that shouldn't even exist, looming over them with murderous intent. Selene and her brother are paralyzed. They don't understand, what is that thing? But the man keeps shouting, "Run, now, Gio." He never gets a second chance. Mid-sentence, the beast literally tears him in half. Right there, right in front of their eyes, it's a massacre. Terror takes over. Selene grabs her brother's arm and bolts. She doesn't look back. She can't. Not while the screams of her friends echo behind her. They find a corner, huddled together, hearts hammering against their ribs. Don't breathe, don't move. And that's where we're leaving it for now. Don't miss the next chapter of this nightmare. Smash that bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the channel.